Chapter 433, Mysterious Employer of 66-inch. Hey Gilrine, I want to ask you something. Michael came to Gilrine's side. The big man was still staring at the door that Gaia walked through. Hello, he had to pat Gilrine on the shoulder to get his attention. Oh sorry, did you say something? Yeah, I want to ask if someone from another house could share the room with me. Gilrine was taken aback by surprise. No, God no. You just came to Mazorth and you already found a mate. The big man was frantically shaking his head. It's not a girl, he's just a friend, Michael quickly said before Gilrine could get another idea. Why can't he stay in his room? Asked Gilrine as Michael waved at Nightmare to bring Wilkes closer. Hearing the footsteps, Gilrine turned around and saw Wilkes walking towards them. The moment he saw the half-elf, Gilrine discovered why Ghost was asking such a question. Oh, Michael noticed the sadness emerge in Gilrine's eyes for a moment when he saw Wilkes. You can share rooms. There are no rules against a student from another house bunking in another house room. It's a common thing here. When Wilkes came to them, Gilrine patted Wilkes on the shoulder. Have it rough, eh? It will get better. Don't fret about it. Gilrine sounded as though he had personal experience of getting bullied. It was obvious to everyone that Gilrine isn't a pure-blooded human. Michael guessed he might be half giant and half human. Compared to the humans, the elves were next-level racists. Hence, Wilkes was affected by the racism much more than Gilrine. Yeah, he's having it rough. So he will stay with us. Michael placed his hand on Wilkes' shoulder with a smile. Wilkes felt like he was being stared at by a predator as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Wilkes wasn't a soft-hearted one. The life on the streets forged him to be cold, cunning, and headstrong. However, something about the human before him sent a chill through his spine. You two should return to the Great Hall. Your prefects will be waiting there. Gilrine patted the youngsters before gently stroking Nightmare's chin. Good luck with your classes tomorrow. Especially in your combat classes. Professor Steinmeier freaks me out. You didn't see? Wilkes asked Gilrine. Saw what? Nothing. Come on 45, it's way past your bedtime. Michael dragged him away from Gilrine before Wilkes spilled the beans about Gaia and him. See you tomorrow, Gilrine. Michael waved at Gilrine before making his way to the Great Hall. The Great Hall was once again packed with students when he arrived. Few of the elves gave Wilkes a death glare while some just ignored him completely as though he didn't exist. Michael could care less about these racist assholes. House alchemists, follow me in an orderly manner, said a curly brown-haired youngster. Arch energy flow will be blocked in 3, 2, 1. A voice echoed through the hall. When the voice said 1, the arch energy in the hall disappeared. However, Michael did not feel any difference. In fact, he could feel the arch energy running in his body. The changes the system made to you when you were in the southern continent applies in Aquilon Realm too. You can thank me now. It's not like you did it for free. Anyways, I appreciate the help, said Michael in his mind. As they were following the perfect, more and more elves down the hall were staring at Wilkes. Some of the elves were slapping him on the head for no reason. The perfect seemed to ignore it, and Michael started to get annoyed by this. Fuckers, Wilkes cursed under his breath. When he received the invitation to join Mazorth, he was happy in his life for the first time. He thought he would finally be free of elves and their bullying. His fantasy was shattered as he realized this place was no different than filled with elves. On top of these racist bullies, he ended with a human who somehow saw him breaking space rings and stealing stuff. Wilkes still had no idea what the human wanted from him. As Michael expected, they followed the prefect to a wall where there was a portrait of a lady with green hair hanging on. Password, the lady asked in a melodious voice. Proporium triecto. The portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it and found themselves in the alchemist common room, a cozy, square room. Once they arrived inside the room, they were welcomed by the roaring fire, squashy armchairs, and sofas. The dormitories were reached by climbing the winding mahogany staircase, decorated with emerald green. Posters of a few old people and a 12-feet-tall massive painting of a green-haired lady with 2 saplings in her hand were covered with thick golden blankets. She was one of the 4 founders of Mazorth and the patron of House Alchemist, Ingrid Stenham. Gold chandeliers cast a warm glow all around, making the room cozier and shinier. The room was full of squashy armchairs, tables, and a bulletin board where school notices, ads, lost posters, etc. could be posted. The common room was decorated in several shades of emerald green, which was associated with the house. The common room was comfortable but not more comfortable than the warrior house basement. There were also bookcases located in the room, filled with various novels and forms of literature. The room was instantly hated by Michael due to the lack of darkness and, to be exact, too much green. He wanted to wear sunglasses to cover his eyes from all the greenness. Boys' rooms are this way. The perfect pointed to the mahogany staircase at the far end of the room. Girls are through that door. He then pointed at the door on the right as the girls made their way to their rooms instead of spending some time in the common room. Michael and Wilkes reached the dormitory by climbing the stairs. In front of them was a narrow corridor, and on either side of the corridors were doors that had no number of any sort. "Take a room you like, we have so many." The prefect's voice came from behind as the boys began to get into a room one by one. Michael loved some privacy and silence, hence he chose the last room at the far end of the corridor. The room was equipped with a centrally located mini fireplace and a bunk bed flanked by a set of windows and space for storing personal belongings. On the windowsill, a water jug was placed, in case any of the students should feel the need for a drink in the middle of the night. A wooden board was located on either side of the bed. A wooden chair and dresser were located on one side of the bed, near the nightstand. A wooden bookcase was located on the other side of the bed with books on top of it. The room had stone walls and wooden floors. The windows had emerald green curtains just like the carpet with the house crest, a single tree in the center of it. "I'll take the top bed." Michael took off his silver long coat and hung it on the dresser before jumping up onto his bed. "Are you gonna tell me who the hell are you and what do you want from me?" Nightmare flapped his wings to land on Michael's chest. "What's your plan in life?" Instead of answering Wilkes' question, he questioned Wilkes. "You're gonna live your whole life scrounging for coins like a petty thief?" asked Michael. "Nah. He will get caught one day and probably die in prison. If he didn't get beaten to death first. So you two are now my well-wishers?" Wilkes rolled his eyes, plugging into the comfy chair beside him. "We can be," Nightmare said. "There's someone who would pay a lot for your talent, Wilkes. Is that so?" Wilkes leaned back to listen to his sales pitch. "Since you might have grown up in the streets, you probably know what kind of men would pay a lot for thieves like you. As a matter of fact, I know, and I've worked for many. I probably know the person you are talking about. Trust me, you don't. No one knows him. You just do our work without asking any questions and he would pay you quite handsomely." "What are you saying?" "Hey, I'm just a petty thief. I stole a scroll years ago which showed me how to break open space rings, okay? Here, I said it. What kind of work can I do to earn a lot? I'm not a cultivation monster like you, but you are a rune master and my employer is looking for an ambitious rune master. Your star level doesn't matter. If you serve him well, he can make you climb up the star levels and even reach the 6-star level. You can't bullshit a bullshitter 66 or whatever your name is. Knock." Someone knocked on the door. Wilkes was closer to the door, so he opened the door to see an old lady with a trolley full of stacks of clothes. "Oh." The woman seemed surprised to see a half-elf. Several seconds later, she put a smile on her face. "Your uniforms, dear. 2 alchemist robes, I presume?" asked the old woman. Wilax shook his head, pretending he didn't see the surprised look on her face. "1 alchemist and 1 rune master, please." The old woman picked up an emerald green robe from the top of the trolley and a navy blue one from under. He handed over the neatly pressed robes to Wilkes. "There he is." Just when the lady was about to turn the trolley and leave, a tall, lean, and mean-looking elf arrived. He was not alone. He had a group of 5 elves behind him. All of them were wearing gray robes with golden borders. Sensing the trouble, the old woman rushed away from the room as fast as her old legs could move. "Oh no, you don't." The elves grabbed the door before Wilax could shut it close. Nightmare craned his neck to see 5 elves walking into their room like they owned the room. One of the elves leading the group pushed Wilkes onto the chair behind. "So the filthy rat is hiding in the sewers? Guys, should we not do this now?" Wilkes tried to wiggle himself out of the trouble. "This is the perfect time to do this. Guys, close the door. We don't want the rat to escape, do we?" The elf put his leg Wilkes' chest and pressed him against the chair. "Evindel, Do we really have to waste this healing potion on him? The elven girl asked worriedly. She seemed to care more about the healing potion than what was about to happen to Wilkas. We can't risk getting expelled, Lena. Especially because of this filth, the elves completely ignored Michael. Nightmare turned his head towards Michael and saw him lay down on the bed with his eyes closed. He did not seem like he was going to intervene. We really shouldn't do this, said Wilkas, or we like to do, plap. The elf slapped Wilkas with enough force to produce an ear-piercing sound. The hand mark was imprinted on Wilkas' pale face. His face reddened, goo-plap. Wilkas' words were abruptly interrupted by another slap. This time, blood started to seep through his nostrils due to the force. Ghost, do something, Nightmare whispered, yet Ghost remained still. Chapter 434, The Prophecy Breaker. Let him soften up a bit more, Michael nonchalantly said to Nightmare and continued to lay down on the bed with his eyes closed. Meanwhile, the elves began to get rougher and rougher. Wilkas growled in pain. Before coming to Mazeroth, Wilkas lived in the slum area of Kingdom Lantis. The elves hated coming to that part of the area. Wilkas learned to hide and he seldom got the attention of the elves after he grew up. However, in Mazeroth, he had a target on his back. He had no place to run away anymore. He thought Mazeroth would be different, but now he realized that Mazeroth could be worse than Lantis. Nightmare wanted to save Wilkas, but after what happened last time when he tried to save Sabrina, Nightmare obeyed Michael's order not to get into trouble by helping people prematurely. As Nightmare was looking at Michael and Wilkas, the elves began to stomp Wilkas on the chest. Hey, don't kill him, the elven girl shouted, seeing Wilkas puking out blood. We have a healing potion. The beating had crossed the point of bullying. They were killing Wilkas. Take the deal 45 or this will be the rest of your life. Getting beaten up. Finally, Michael opened his mouth again. The elves stopped the beating for a second to turn their gazes towards Michael. Michael jumped down from the bunk bed / he rolled up his sleeves to his elbows, slowly walking towards the group of elves. The elven woman was taken aback by him as she stared at him for a few moments without even blinking. He was on par with the elven princes of Ar in terms of good-looking, and unlike the elven princess, his body was rough and muscular. She was undressing him in her mind as she couldn't help it. The white shirt he wore stretched to the point it looked as though it was going to tear apart. Deal, look at this human asshole. The leader of this elven gang snickered at Michael. What do you want? The elf asked grimly. He was not threatened by Michael's physique. To give you a choice, said Michael, cracking his neck. You see, this half-elf works for me now. So the employer-employee contract says any damage to the employee by racist assholes will result in the assholes getting their bones broken up. The elf's face turned in overwhelming anger. The elves believed they were the superior race and every other race was beneath them. Thus, Michael's words kindled the anger flame inside them. The other elves showed the same reaction as the leader elf. Even the elven girl frowned as she wanted to rip his tongue out for insulting them. You just made the worst mistake in your pathetic life, Mego. You and your friends can leave now, or one of you can carry your racist butts in a bucket. Wilkas was growling on the ground. If he wasn't overwhelmed by pain, he would have been surprised by Michael because he was picking up a fight with 5 elves without the ability to cast spells. Now I'm going to count to 3. Maggot, the elf stepped forward. 2. The moment the word 2 came out of his mouth, Michael headbutted the elf, breaking his nose. In a snap of time, he slammed the elf's head onto the wall nearby and elbowed his head rapidly. The elves were stunned as everything happened so fast. The elf fell with blood spraying out of his nose. The elf did not move at all. Nightmare wondered if the elf was dead or alive. While the elves were stunned, Michael grabbed a thick book from the book rack on his right and used the spine of the book to break another nose. This time, the other elves reacted as they threw their fists at Michael. Michael hit the elf's nose with the book yet again before slapping the fist of the girl so hard her wrist turned another side. Ah! The girl screamed in agony. The girl was so delicate and Michael was so strong. Hence, his single slap on her wrist broke her wrist. The elf who got hit by the book stumbled back due to the force of his nose breaking. The leader elf was lying on the ground beside Wilkas. The girl was screaming in agony and another elf was knocked out. Only 2 elves remained, but fear started to cloud the hearts of the remaining 2. Michael was too fast. They couldn't cope with his speed. Michael did not stop with breaking the girl's wrist. He threw the book, which now had blood on the cover, at one elf. The elf stumbled back as he walked towards them, stepping over the elf who got his nose broken by the book. The elf puked blood as Wilkes did when Michael stepped over his chest. Arg! The girl was still screaming, holding her broken wrist. But her scream was abruptly stopped by a knee to her face. The force immediately knocked her out cold. Seeing the girl gets knocked out by the human caused the last 2 elves to boil in anger. They mustered their courage to dash at him. Michael evaded their fists with ease. Plop! He slapped one elf on the face, making him stumble back and fall down. The other elf was unlucky as he grabbed his hand and punched the elbow, snapping the bone in half. The elf screamed, but Michael did not give a shit about his agony. He grabbed the elf by his neck and rapidly punched him in the face until the elf's rosy face got painted red with his blood. When Michael turned to look at the elf who did not get knocked out cold by him, his eyes flickered in crimson red. In pain and fear, the elf did not notice his eyes flickering. Michael bent down and picked up the healing potion from the ground near the elven girl. "Get out of my room." His gaze sent a chill running through the elf's spine. He quickly got himself back to his feet and dragged his friends outside the room as fast as he could. Michael then threw the healing potion as it was nothing to Wilkes. "What have you done?" After chugging the healing potion and getting back on his feet, Wilkes asked Michael. He was back on his bunk bed. "Bullied the bullies. That fucking idiots. Why can't they leave me alone?" Wilkes cursed the elves before crashing down on the chair. "This is our first day here and we are already in a big trouble. Now we aren't. If anyone is in trouble, it's them," said Nightmare. Wilkes looked surprised as Nightmare began to explain what Gilrine and Gaia said about the dwarf beating up a guy from the warrior house. Although what he heard from Nightmare surprised him, the story did make sense to Wilkes. "The elves are like snakes, man. Once they target you, they want rest until you are under 6 feet. Humph," Nightmare snickered. Neither Wilkes nor the elves had any idea about what he was capable of. As far as Nightmare was concerned, they were lucky that Michael was able to control himself. In case the third persona took control, they would have been lying on the ground in their own pool of blood. "I don't think the warriors would let go scot-free after someone beat up their house students. I hope we don't get expelled," Wilkes sighed. "I don't give a shit about this school and you shouldn't either. If you aim to get rich and powerful, there are better ways and the choice you made is the best way," said Michael. He wanted to get some shut-eye before starting his search for the elf in the tree. He had no idea where the elf might be or how big the Ukulun realm was. He was having second thoughts about using drones to scour the realm for the elf, as the drones might get detected by some arrays if Mazeroth have any, and it was highly likely that they have numerous defense mechanisms. Somewhere else in the Ukulun realm, Eladir, the elf Michael and Gaia were searching for, was looking at the dark sky above him. The sky was ominous and dark like never before. There was not a single star or speck of glow in the dark sky. It was pitch black, void of any light. The ominous sky put a smile on his face. One could not see a smile though, because his face was merged with a tree and barks covered most of his body. "He is here," Eladir said. He closed his eyes, mumbling something under his breath. Several glowing runes appeared on the tree. The banyan tree withered immediately, but soon, the tree turned into its previous self. However, the leaves fell off the tree and began to form a cyclone. A couple of seconds later, the cyclone took a shape of a humanoid shape. "Find him. Where there is blood, he will be there." The humanoid figure made of leaves flew away with the wind, leaving Eladir alone. The Great War has finally begun. The Sky Hall went so far to prevent the Dark Lord from appearing in this world. 3,000 years ago, the Order of Death was wiped off by the Sky Hall and the Guardians. They failed the Dark Lord, and their failure resulted in Sky Hall prisoning the soul of the Dark Lord in a void universe. Only a few in this world knew the origins of the Dark Lord and what the Sky Hall did to him. The reason they left him alive was only Eladir knew how to open the portal back to Earth, and if the Sky Hall managed to cast the Dark Lord back to his cage, he wouldn't come back to this universe for the rest of his life. Suddenly Eladir looked up to see a bright glow appear in the sky. Alas, the prophecy breaker appeared. Asked Michael, I'm not illiterate thanks to Mentor Orc. Mentor Orc? That's what we call him in the slums. No one knew his real name or why he spent his time teaching the orphans in the slums. Wilkes was grateful to the orc, and Michael could see that in his eyes. They looked at the orcs who occupied the middle benches. Unlike the rest of the students, the orcs were sitting in silence reading their books. They did not seem violent at all despite their scary looks. The dwarves were the rowdy kids as they already started to tear the pages from the books and build ships, ducks, and all kinds of things and threw at the human girls. You're gonna learn combat by reading books? Snickered Michael seeing Wilkes reading the thick black book. Why else do we have this book? Michael just shook his head before leaning back on the wall and stretching his legs out. He used his hands as pillows to cushion his head. The longer they spent without a teacher, the louder the classroom became. The elven girls were staring at the door eagerly waiting for their combat teacher. For almost half an hour past their class time, the door creaked open. Wilkes craned his neck to see the professor who was intimate with 6060 last night entering the classroom with a honey bun and a large mug. Gaia approached the teacher's table located at the front of the classroom before a large blackboard. She placed the mug on the table. Get your asses up. Gaia slammed the table as the students were shaken by her. They immediately stood. To attract less attention, Michael too stood up. However, he was laughing inside so much. He couldn't wait to see Gaia's atrocities as the combat teacher. Didn't anyone tell you to stand up and greet the teacher when they enter the classroom? Asked Gaia looking at the classroom. Wait, you are the combat teacher? The dwarves murmured, you have a problem with that, you short fuck. The elves almost coughed up blood when they heard her yell at the dwarves. The dwarves were stunned beyond words. None of them expected to get yelled at like this. Many doubted she could be their teacher because she was too young and too unruly. I am Professor Steinmeier. I came here to teach you noobs how not to get yourself killed. Now move your asses, we are going out. And just as Gaia took a step towards the door, an elven girl raised her hand. Gaia looked over her shoulder to see her silver-haired girl from the front row raising her hand. What? Aren't we gonna start with Chapter 1? Chapter 1? Frowned Gaia. She made herself to the front row and snatched the book from another elven boy. Give me that. The students realized their professor was reading the combat book for the first time in her life by looking at the surprised look on her face. What is this shit? You're gonna learn combat by reading books. That's what he said, Wilkes mumbled. Basics of combat, how to defend yourself, magic defense, sword theory, dual wielding, archery. Gaia rummaged through the book before throwing it away. Only morons would expect to learn the art of combat by reading books. Unless your pathetic plan is to kill your opponent by boring him to death, you have to move your asses and try to grasp what I teach you. Leave your fucking books and follow me. She turned again to walk towards the door when another elven girl raised her hand. I swear to God, if you ask anything remotely related to the book, I will barbecue your ass and feed it to the giant eagles. The girl quickly put her hands down. Although the elves were not at all delighted to see a human teaching them the art of combat, they did not dare to show their arrogance to Gaia because she held the position of the professor. Everyone stepped out of their tables and followed her in an orderly manner. You know her? Asked Wilkes following Michael behind. I saw you saw. Saw what? Wilkes was surprised. You know what? Where are we going? She seems like a crazy bitch. No shit. I have a bad feeling about her. Oh, she called you a short fuck. We are the same height, you moron. The dwarves were bitching about Gaia while moving forward in the line. She is interesting. I feel we are going to learn a lot from her. Compared to the dwarves, the orcs were such nice guys. They were praising Gaia regardless of how she acted. Michael was truly surprised to see how these orcs behaved. They seemed peaceful and friendly. Several minutes later, they reached the outskirts of the forest spanning to the west. The forest was dark and gloomy, and radiated an eerie feeling. The trees in the forest were malady brown. Grains of poison begrimed the bark and gleamed like witch dust. The smoky air and stifling atmosphere provided the perfect abode for those who worshipped the darkness rather than the light. In the dense shadows, Spiders clutched their snare strings. Their webs shimmered like meshed steel dipped in silver. The forest looked primordial, dark, and gloomy as the dark forest where Michael lives. Centuries-old trees with sprawling limbs guarded the darkness, blotting out any sunlight. Bewailing sounds ghosted through the trees. Whether it was from prey or a predator, only the forest could tell. It was truly a place to make everyone's veins freeze over. "Form a circle," Gaia said, amplifying her voice with arch energy. "I assume you all have your weapons with you." The students nodded. Many were gawking at the forest. Their faces looked pale due to fear. "Your first lesson: go to the forest and survive for 30 minutes. If you step out of the forest before the clock runs out, you will be on the roster to clean the latrines for a week." The students were stunned. Their jaws dropped a few inches as one elf shouted, "You can't do this. The Black Forest is forbidden to the students. You can't ask us to risk our lives." Gaia stomped the ground as a pebble rocketed to her hand. With a swift kick to the pebble, she sent the pebble soaring towards the elf. "Arg!" The elf screamed when the pebble broke his nose. The pebble hit the elf right between his eyes with deadly accuracy. "Go cry to your mommy." Boo-hoo, the elf was too ashamed. His body shivered in anger as he had never been ashamed like this in his life before. He could not stand there anymore as he rushed away from the group. "If you bitches are too afraid to roam around the safest areas of the forest, you shouldn't have come to Mazeroth. This is a place for winners, not for cowardly losers. Are you winners or spineless losers?" Michael wondered why she was trying to send the students into the forest. As expected, the students did not shout but mumbled the word winners meekly. "What is she doing?" From a distance, an elderly woman with a hunched back was looking at Gaia and the students. Headmistress Kayla stood beside her with a curious look on her face. "Trying something new, I guess." Chapter 436. A mountain troll. The further they walked into the forest, the lesser they saw what was in front of them. The paths were barely passable. Wilkes could hardly keep up with him without losing sight of him. "Do you know how to climb trees?" asked Michael, stopping under a huge birch tree. "Because I'm a half-elf, you expect me to know how to climb a tree?" Wilkes misunderstood Michael. He didn't realize Michael was really going to get onto a branch on top until Michael fired a metal hook from the Mark III bracers he was wearing around his wrist. In a blink of an eye, he was on top of the tree. Wilkes looked up at the tree with his mouth wide open. "Grab this tight." Wilkes grabbed onto the metal hook tightly. The next thing he knew, he was getting lifted off the ground. "What the hell?" Wilkes grabbed onto the tree to balance himself. He didn't even want to look down as they were standing too high from the ground. A gust of wind flew past his face. "Why is he here?" Wilkes turned to see Professor Steinmeier standing between them on the tree branch. She was staring at him. "Professor? What's your plan?" asked Gaia, ignoring Wilkes. After Wilkes went to sleep last night, Michael and Gaia talked about everything through the earpiece. Since Gaia just came up with the plan to send the students into the forest just this morning, Michael was in the dark. You know what they say when you want to hide a tree, hide it in the forest. In our case, they might have literally hidden the elf somewhere in this forest. "I needed an excuse to get you here," said Gaia. The way Professor Steinmeier put her hand on 60SAX's shoulder creeped out Wilkes. He couldn't believe how a professor of a prestigious academy like this could have a relationship with a student. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that they might know each other before coming to Mazeroth. "I did some digging. This place hasn't been monitored by any arrays, so it's safe." Their conversation didn't make any sense to Wilkes. He felt pretty awkward and unsafe standing on the branch. Michael had already scanned their surroundings and made sure that they were not being watched. However, he did not want to deploy the drones and spiders in front of Wilkes. The point was to show Wilkes how powerful his mysterious employer is. "Keep digging. If the elf is here, I don't think we can find him without any help. Let's go searching." By giving the students the assignment to survive in the forest, she gave both Michael and her the chance to roam through the woods searching for the elf without raising any suspicion. "Should we take him with us?" asked Gaia. "Why not?" The next moment Gaia grabbed Wilkes by the back of his neck before jumping down from the branch. "Arg, Fuck, Wilkes screamed. When they landed on the ground, Wilkes was breathing heavily as he was terrified. You sure hell be of use to us? Who are you people? Gaia put her hand on Wilkes' shoulder. He could feel her gently squeezing his shoulder. The people who could make you very rich or very dead are... Suddenly a scream echoed through the forest. They immediately looked in the direction of the scream. Do you feel that? Asked Wilkes, feeling the ground trembling. The tremble increased by the second to the point it felt like they were having a powerful earthquake. Arg! The screams of the students reverberated in the forest louder and louder. Something's coming this way. Wilkes looked terrified as expected. Gaia took off from the ground like a bullet through the canopy. It didn't even take a minute before she came back with a pale face. We have to go, she sounded alarmed. What did you see? Asked Michael. We don't have time. There is a fucking mountain troll coming this way. What the fuck is a mountain troll? Wilkes shrieked. Come on, run. Gaia pushed Michael and Wilkes to run. She could fly away unlike Wilkes and Michael. To hide his ability to use arch energy, Michael had to avoid flying or using any spells. Hence his only way to escape was to run. Didn't you read the fucking book they gave you? Wilkes almost puked blood. She threw away the book and mocked them for having a combat book. She talked as though she loathed having books for combat class, yet at a moment like this, she was yelling at him for not reading the book. It was obvious that she read the whole book, unlike what she pretended. Although Michael did not know what a mountain troll is, he wasn't going to wait around. He started to run towards the castle as Wilkes ran behind him. Ja! A thunderous growl shook the forest as they were running. I hate this place, Wilkes shouted while he was running. They ran as fast as they could without looking back. However, the trembling indicated that the mountain troll was getting close to them. The sound of trees shattering and cracking could be heard on top of the screaming sounds of the students. Seeing the light at the end of the forest gave Wilkes enough boost to push his body to the extreme. As a half-elf, Wilkes was born with extreme agility and speed. No human had ever outrun Wilkes. He was able to run through the woods as the forest was his playground thanks to his nimble body and the training he had since he was born. Nonetheless, he was barely able to keep up with 66. Surprisingly, this was 66 did not look like he was pushing his body to the limit. He seemed calm and collected regardless of the mountain troll chasing them. With a final push, Wilkes and Michael jumped out of the woods and reached the ground between the forest and Mazeroth Castle. They saw students running to the castle like a bat out of hell. Michael was neither in the shape to fight nor wanted to fight the mountain troll, which would defeat his purpose of staying anonymous. Ja! After putting some distance between the forest and them, they heard an ear-piercing thunderous roar coming from behind. They looked over their shoulder to see a 15-feet humanoid beast with gray skin, a bald head, and overgrown ears roaring to the sky. In its giant hands, it held a grown tree. The troll used the tree as a club. The troll's belly looked as though it just ate a few buffaloes whole. Even from a distance, the putrid smell that came from the mountain troll made Wilkes' face go green. Run! Gilrein's shout attracted Michael's attention as well as the other students. It was not like Michael planned to stay put and watch the troll. He was just momentarily stunned to see a mountain troll in real life. Run, human! The troll is resistant to all magic attacks, Michael heard Gaia's voice in his head. Defeating a 15-feet giant without spells was impossible, even for him. He was strong but not strong enough to defeat the mountain troll. It would squash him like a bug if he picked up a fight with the troll. Besides, Michael had no intention to fight with the troll. The more he pushed himself, the harder it would be to prevent the third person from showing up. Where the heck are the professors? Wilkes asked while running with him. Calm down, boy. Michael saw Gilrein approach the troll with his hands reached out. What the fuck is he doing? It's not a dog he could tame, Wilkes growled looking over her shoulder. The mountain troll surprisingly stopped roaring. It tilted its head looking at Gilrein. The troll stood still as Gilrein slowly approached the troll, daring not to make any sudden moves. Ja! Yet, when he was just a few meters away from the troll's eyes flickered in red as it raised the tree in its hand high in the sky to squash Gilrein with it. Boom! The very next moment, a rainbow color beam shot out from the sky and landed between Gilrine and the mountain troll. The force of the beam pushed the mountain troll a couple of steps back. The bright light radiated from the beam made the troll close its eyes for a second. Michael knew it was a teleportation beam and he wondered who would step out of the beam. Wilkes, on the other hand, expected a bunch of people or the guards or the professors to step out of the beam to kill the troll. However, who was there when the light beam disappeared was a girl in ocean blue robes. She was taller than average girls and wore clothes that screamed wealth. Her raven black hair fluttered in the wind. Michael could not see her face, but by the look of her arms, he could tell she was a trained warrior. Standing in front of the mountain troll, the girl never moved a muscle. She remained as calm as the sea. "Leave," the girl ordered Gilrine. Her authoritative voice shook Gilrine as his legs automatically started to move backward. Michael failed to see any magical fluctuations around her, which meant just like the students, she was too unable to use arch energy. The mountain troll changed its target from Gilrine to the girl in front of it. It once again raised the tree in its hand higher to attack the girl. Chapter 437, The Holy Maiden. The mountain troll roared before smashing the club on the ground to squash her. However, the girl threw the blade, aiming at the troll's chest. The blade impaled the mountain troll. The chain attached to the blade grew shorter and shorter as she used the blade as a pulley to reach the mountain troll. Boom! At this time, the mountain troll smashed the ground, creating a deep crater. The troll lifted off the tree to see there was no blood and felt the girl running on its shoulder. The mountain troll roared violently, slapping itself to catch the girl. She was fast. In frustration and anger, the troll raised its club once again. This time, however, the girl fired the two blades in her hand, aiming at the tree in the troll's hand. She jumped off from the troll's shoulder, holding the two blades tight. She yanked the chains attached to her blades to bring down the tree on the troll's head. When she landed on the ground, the troll lost control of the tree in its hand. Bam! With a final yank, the girl brought the tree hard on the troll's head. Wilkes realized the tree was heavier than it looked when it split open the troll's head like an egg. The girl did not even turn back to see the troll's body as it hit the ground with a loud booming sound. The blades reached her hand. She put the blades into the sheaths hanging on her back. Michael had been fascinated by the girl. She was so badass. The battle with the troll ended before it even began. Only a battle-hardened warrior would be able to pull off what the girl just did. Moreover, she did not use any arch energy or spells, it was her raw strength. After Noah, this girl seemed to be a tougher opponent. He had a feeling that if they battled, he might lose the battle. Gilrine cried out loud, running towards the fallen troll. The girl did not remain there but left the area. Several professors were running towards the mountain troll while the prefects came rushing out to escort the students to their dorms. "Who is that?" asked Wilkes in shock. Michael stared at the girl disappearing into the castle. "I have a feeling we will meet soon," he said to himself before turning back to leave for their rooms. Gilrine in the distance knelt beside the mountain troll with tears gushing out of his eyes. His sobbing sound was loud enough for everyone to hear. Back in the castle, a hunched old woman walking with the support of staff was walking from one end to another in a spacious room. It was a large and beautiful circular room, full of weird little noises. Several gold instruments stood on spindle-legged tables, whirring and emitting little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old men and women, all of whom were snoozing gently in their frames. There was also a throne made of ice. The old woman's pace came to a halt when she saw the door creak open. "Holy Maiden," the old woman's back already looked like it was bowing down due to her hunched back. Still, when she saw the girl, she bowed further down. "Bai Ning." The girl nodded before making her way to the throne. The air around the throne was chilly enough to freeze someone's bones. Still, the girl sat comfortably on the throne without showing any signs of pain. She seemed extremely comfortable and dominant. "I told you can address me as Rowena in private." The girl who stunned Michael was none other than Noah's elder sister. He had no idea that she was his big sister. The position of Holy Maiden was only given to a cultivator with extremely rare yang energy in their body. The position was held by no one for the last 3,000 years until Rowena. Her successor, the previous Holy Maiden, was said to have reached the celestial stage and parted the world to the realm of angels. That was an incredibly dangerous Holy Maiden. Bai Ning stomped the ground with her staff. In her voice, one could notice the anger but also care. "I'm alive and the troll isn't," Rowena said with an expressionless face. "Kayla should put a leash on her professors." The woman hunched her way towards the table, flicked her wrist to take out the teapot set, and began to brew tea for the Holy Maiden. The tea she brewed was radiating smoke. However, the tea was not hot, it was freezing to the bone. If anyone else drank it instead of her, the weak would die in a matter of seconds while the strong might live only when they warmed their body to an extreme temperature. "Have you located the primordial flames?" asked Rowena, taking sips of her bone-chilling tea. "The spell has narrowed the search area, but we still need some time. What about the demon?" Bai Ning waved her hands as a large bowl full of glistening blue liquid appeared on the table. The old woman poured a red liquid into the bowl and stared at the red liquid fuse with the blue liquid. "Somehow the demon has been escaping my location spells. Then the devil is not alone." "The sooner we find it the better," said Rowena. "The world is not ready to accept the existence of higher realms. If they knew they had a demon walking among them, it would cause a massive panic wave. Demons, imposters, wars, famine, hunger, the great clans are supposed to fix these. They are becoming incompetent by the day." Bai Ning was a straightforward person. She had never held back her thoughts. Hence, she called the great clans incompetent in front of Rowena, whose brother is in one of the great clans, the Guardian Guild. And the other task, the air in the room became chillier. Bai Ning stopped looking at the bowl and turned her gaze towards Rowena. "The Guardians should handle it, Holy Maiden. The Sky Hall shouldn't meddle with Dash." Bai Ning was interrupted by the sudden coldness she felt in her body. Rowena crushed the teacup in her hand before standing up from her throne. "Someone targeted my family. I made it clear you find them and bring them to me." The old woman stepped backward in fear. Although she had higher cultivation, Bai Ning was afraid of the Holy Maiden. They couldn't measure Rowena's power using just cultivation stages. She was a being in the making to become a goddess, and Bai Ning did not want the wrath of a goddess to fall upon her. Rowena's eyes flicked in blue like a pair of sapphires. "My family is more important than Sky Hall. You have 3 days to find the assassins." Bai Ning could barely breathe. She just nodded her head in fear and waited for Rowena to leave the room. "The elders need to know this." After Rowena left the room, Bai Ning mumbled under her breath. Meanwhile, Gaia and Gilrine were standing in a cozy room. The room had a large fireplace, windows overlooking the training grounds and the battle arena, and a sparse stone-floored bedroom behind a concealed door. Headmistress Kayla was staring at both of them. Her eyes were like daggers cutting through Gaia and Gilrine. "A mountain troll? What were you thinking, Gilrine?" Gilrine was shivering. He was swallowing a mouth full of saliva in nervousness. "And you, Professor Stein?" Kayla turned her focus onto Gaia. "You should have been more careful. How the hell would I know this crazy brat was raising a bloody mountain troll in the Black Forest?" "Mythic," Gilrine mumbled under his breath. His eyes were still teary due to the loss of his beloved mountain troll. Kayla sighed. "Explain yourself, Gilrine. Why were you keeping a mountain troll in the Black Forest?" Gilrine looked awkward as he looked between Kayla and Gaia. "Professor Steinmeier." Seeing Gilrine hesitating to explain himself in front of Gaia, Headmistress Kayla realized that he must be keeping the mountain troll for a reason. Hence, Kayla first wanted to deal with Gaia and sent her away. "I am not going to tell you how to conduct your classes, but please be more vigilant. Lives could have been lost today. I'll be more careful, Professor Kayla." Gaia nodded as she did not want to argue with Kayla when she was a frickin' imposter. Gaia turned back, showing her back to Kayla. "Is that a peanut stuck in your beard?" asked Gaia. Before Gilrine could put his hands into his beard, Gaia helped him. "Jeesh." Gilrine awkwardly tried to smile after she helped remove the peanut. Little did he know that Gaia was not removing any peanuts but putting a spider into his bushy beard. It was indeed risky, but she took the risk to know why Gilrine was keeping a mountain troll in the Black Forest. Since a lousy mouth man like Gilrine was keeping it a secret, She knew whatever the reason he was keeping a mountain troll, it must be something very important. Oh, Professor Steinma, Gaia felt a chill running through her spine. Her heart almost jumped out of her chest cavity when she heard Kayla calling just after she placed a spider into Gilrein's beard to spy on them. Yes, Professor Kayla. She turned back again, controlling any signs of nervousness from showing up on her face. You are on detention duty today. If anyone received detention, take them to the Black Forest and make them harvest Blackfoot mushrooms. Just do me a favor, don't let the students go past the Red Oaks. Human, get yourself a detention. After leaving Headmistress Kayla's room, she contacted Michael through the earpiece. In the girls' dormitory of Warrior House, Victoria was practicing her sword skills by slashing and dashing a dummy while Edith was laying on the bed complaining, "You know we could have died. Most of us who are taking the combat class aren't warriors. We want to learn about defending ourselves, not how to get yourself killed." Edith was pretty shaken up by the mountain troll. They were one of the few students who saw the mountain troll too close and barely escaped. "We have to complain about Professor Steinmeier to someone." "You're just overreacting," Victoria calmly said. She was right. You can't learn combat by reading books. If we can't survive a mountain troll, we don't deserve to be here. Think about it, the next time when you're being chased by a mountain troll, you would not be as scared as now. Knock. Their conversation was interrupted by someone who was knocking on the door outside. "Who is there?" asked Edith with an irritated voice. "Trouble," Victoria muttered. Chapter 438. Michael meets Victoria. "We are here for 34. The youngster who was adorned in gray robes of house warriors said to Edith. "Why?" asked Edith. The blonde-haired youngster smiled, but behind his smile, there was a slight irritation. Obviously, he did not know Edith's identity. If he had known she was the little sister of Layla Alden, he would have talked to her in a different tone. Brother 29 asked for her. Victoria put her wooden sword into the sheath hanging on the side of her waist. Who is 29 and why is he asking for her? Edith was annoyed by the group. They acted so smugly and she did not like their attitudes. If I am right, he must be a friend of the head prefect, Elliot Watson. Victoria came to Edith's side, tying her hair into a bun and putting on the warrior's long coat. The young man nodded. She had noticed a senior student following her since she joined the House of Warriors. She was quite annoyed by him and she decided to deal with them before they became trouble. You can stay here, Edith. I'll go with them. Edith immediately shook her head. If you are going, I'm coming with you, Victoria sighed. Edith did not seem like she could be convinced otherwise. Food, Edith. It was impossible to change Victoria's mind after she decided something. This time, she decided to go with these youngsters and Edith knew she could not be stopped. Since she wouldn't be able to change her mind, she decided to accompany Victoria. Lead the way, I have something special to give him, Victoria smiled. The youngster's heart skipped a beat because of her alluring smile. The cosmic energy running in her body was transforming her body as well as soul from inside. It had been turning her into an angelic beauty. The arrays surrounding the castle prevented the students from using arch energy. However, they were unable to do anything to the cosmic energy in her body. Hence, if she wanted, she could cast spells, and the spells cast using the cosmic energy would be devastatingly powerful. Wonderful! The young man grinned ear to ear before leading them to 29, who was a lackey of head prefect Elliot Watson. They strolled through the corridors and came to the grand staircase, which was a massive stairway in Mazeroth Castle. The structure was mainly used to access each floor of the castle, including the dungeons. The concept of moving stairs was invented and built by the 6-star architect who built Mazoth and Karjan Pavlovich, a 6-star blacksmith and one of the founders of Mazeroth. The staircases led from platform to platform and went as high as the 9th floor, where they came to an end. The stairs also had a knack for moving around the staircase chamber, usually when a student was walking up one of them. Like most walls in the castle, there were hundreds of portraits covering the walls surrounding the staircase, and it was considered an honor for the painted likeness of a cultivator to be mounted on the walls of the grand staircase. Some of these portraits concealed secret passages to other areas within the castle. After climbing several steps, the youngster stood in front of a portrait of a laughing, chubby old woman. Rishta, Password accepted, the lady smiled, waving her hand. Soon the portrait moved, revealing a secret passage. The passage was lit with torches rather than glowing orbs. Victoria silently followed the boys into the passage while Edith kept looking around nervously. She was not a warrior such as her sister or Victoria. In fact, she hated violence and killings, but she was not naive to expect a world without both. It took them exactly 5 minutes to reach the end of the passage. The passage opened up to a cozy room decorated with portraits, a fireplace, and exquisite vases containing ravishingly beautiful flowers. At the center of the room was a round table with 2 candles as well as various delicious foods. "Welcome, young miss." A tall young man clad in golden robes walked out of the door on the other side with a bright smile on his face. The passage opening behind Victoria and Edith vanished into thin air. Edith was slightly panicked, unlike Victoria, who remained as calm as the sea. When he came closer to them, the 5 young men who led Victoria here stepped back. The young man bent his waist to give Victoria a royal bow. "You look beautiful." "I am Earl Decker." Victoria finished his sentence with a snicker. The young man was taken aback by surprise. "The 3rd son of the Decker family of Kingdom Marina of R." Victoria talked while gracefully walking around the room. "Your family holds many mines, including the 2nd largest gold mine. Your family had been trying to expand your mining business to the southern continent." Earl was having mixed feelings. On one hand, she looked so domineering and gorgeous. On the other hand, she looked kinda scary. He had no idea how the heck she figured out his identity, as he had never revealed it to anyone except Elliot. "For years, your family has been trying to leverage the Senates using your identity as a student of Mazeroth." "Fools." "Humph," Victoria snickered. "The Senates don't give a damn about Mazeroth. Hence, your family chose to go with the next big thing, marriage." Earl frowned, hearing the scorn in her tone. "She just called her family fools in front of his lackeys. But your fiancé disappeared the day before your marriage. Everyone believes she eloped with her mysterious lover, but you know the truth, don't you, Decker?" "I don't know, Don't bother." Yet again Victoria interrupted his sentence. She finished strolling around the hall and came before him. "You were pretty high that night, and when she told you no, you forced yourself on her and strangled her to death." Decker's mind went blank. No one knew what happened that night, yet somehow she knew exactly what happened. He started to have a bad feeling in his guts. "Men like you are trash, and I don't like being stalked by trash like you." Plop. Victoria slapped Decker, shocking everyone in the room. His face immediately turned red. Edith could see Victoria's palm prints on his face. For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, Decker lost his gentleman composure as he gritted his teeth. "Bitch." Plop. She slapped him again. This time, her slap contained a sliver of cosmic energy. He was thrown into the table with the food he prepared to impress Victoria. The 5 young men behind them were in a stupor. They did not know what to do. Arg. Decker's world was spinning. His mind was in shambles due to the slap. He tried to pick himself up, but he was unable to do so. Victoria unsheathed the wooden practice sword. However, her target was not Decker but the 5 youngsters behind her. When she turned back with the sword in her hand, the 5 of them felt a chill. "Miss, pimps." "Humph," Victoria snickered, closing the gap between them. The 5 young men could not raise their hands to hit her. They had no idea about Decker's history like Victoria. They thought they were helping him confess his newborn love to Victoria. Simply, they were not as bad as Decker. Pet. However, Victoria gave no damn about their intention. She started to swing her sword, beating the crap out of the 5 youngsters. "Hey!" Edith tried to stop Victoria from beating them up. The youngster who led them here received more beatings than the rest of them. He had lost several teeth and was on the verge of losing consciousness. "Watch out!" Suddenly Edith noticed Decker rushing towards Victoria with a knife in his hand. Without even turning back, Victoria swung her sword back. Plop. The wooden sword hit Decker with enough force to make him stumble backward. The wooden sword almost cracked due to the force. "Trash. Did you think him as weak as your fiancé?" Victoria put her feet on Decker's neck. She pressed his neck with her feet, squeezing the life out of him slowly. "Stop." Edith cried out loud. She came running to Victoria and shook her shoulders. "You're gonna kill him. We will report this to Professor Steinmeier, she will deal with them. If you killed him, we will be expelled." Edith pleaded with Victoria to knock some sense into her. "I don't give a damn about this place. I am here for the—" Before finishing her sentence, Victoria stomped Decker's face, knocking him out cold. Primordial flame. Edith heard Victoria. At this point, Victoria didn't know she just gave a reason for the Dark Lord to turn the Decker family against Thusia. The next day night, Gaia was waiting on the grass field near the Black Forest border with Gilrine by her side. "I am gonna give him another detention for making me wait." Gilrine scratched the back of his neck hearing her threaten the student. "There they are." Gaia couldn't help smiling seeing Michael. Her smile, however, immediately froze when she saw two girls behind him. "Who the heck are you two? And what are you two doing here?" Gaia asked the two girls. One girl seemed warm and friendly while the red-haired girl looked cold and proud. The two girls were none other than Victoria and Edith. Victoria's mask prevented Michael from recognizing her, and she did not recognize him because of his beard and changed demeanor. Moreover, Victoria barely looked at him. For her, he was not even worth a look. "We are here for the detention, Professor." For a moment, Gaia looked at them blankly. She was planning to venture into the forest with Michael to find the secret that Gilrine's mountain troll was guarding. "Who gave you detention, girls?" asked Gilrine. "Professor Lane," said Edith. "Oh," Gilrine did not seem very surprised. "Why?" asked Gaia in an annoyed tone of voice. "He caught us outside our dorm after the curtain," Edith told Gaia. After coming back from Decker's little secret room, Professor Lane, the head of House Alchemists, caught the two girls and gave them detention for being late. Edith was grateful that he only gave them detention and did not expel them. However, Decker wasn't so lucky. He was packing his bags as they were speaking. "Gilrine, can't I give them something else to do instead of bringing them with us?" "I don't think so, Professor Steinmeier." "Professor, we won't give you any trouble," Edith said politely. "We can protect ourselves, Professor," Victoria calmly said. "We could use a warrior, Professor, in case we encountered a wild beast." In the corner of her eyes, she could see Michael nod. "Damn it. Okay, but you two must follow my orders no matter what without a question. Got it?" "Yes, Professor." Edith bobbed her head up and down while Victoria gave Gaia a small nod. "Let's go." Finally, in the middle of the night, the five of them ventured into the Black Forest with each having a plan of their own. Chapter 439. Let me out. The smoky mist filling the forest gave out an ominous feeling. There wasn't a sound except for their footsteps. Gilrine led the way with Gaia while Michael walked last, following Victoria and Edith. Occasionally Edith made eye contact with him and smiled. Somehow he reminded of Noah to her. They were still on the outskirts of the forest as they did not go deeper into the forest. A few yards away, they saw a line of red oak trees. Students were forbidden to cross the red oak trees. "Now you should feel the arch energy once again," said Gilrine, turning back to look at the three students. He was oblivious to the fact that except for Edith, both Michael and Victoria could use spells. The latter had the cosmic energy running through her veins, while for Michael, the system enabled him to use arch energy despite the arrays. "Look around, you will find the mushrooms you're looking for," said Gilrine. "Where are you going?" Gaia asked Gilrine. "Just making sure we are alone. I don't want any more surprises." Gaia could see the sweat drops forming on his forehead. It was obvious that he was lying. Considering Gaia wanted to follow him, she pretended to believe him. "Good idea," she nodded. "You three, start picking the Blackfoot mushrooms." Gaia sat on a log as the three of them pretended to look around to pick the mushrooms. Thanks to the light orb conjured by Gaia, they were able to look around their surroundings. Edith stared at Michael picking the charcoal-colored mushrooms. As their name suggested, the mushrooms were in the shape of a human foot. Michael picked a bunch of mushrooms from the rotten logs and the ground surrounding the trees. Following Michael, Edith also located the mushrooms and collected the mushrooms. Victoria was just pretending to pick mushrooms. Gaia saw that but did not give any shit. "You go look somewhere else." Edith saw Professor Steinmeier shouting an order at 66. "Yes, Professor," he nodded before walking away from their spot, leaving the girls. Victoria and Edith sighed in relaxation as they now only had to deal with Professor Steinmeier. If she left the area, they would be able to look for the primordial flames. Just as they hoped, a few minutes later, Professor Steinmeier left the area after telling them to stay put. Victoria waited until Professor Steinmeier's figure disappeared into the forest. She then flicked her wrist as a golden compass materialized on her palm. The single red needle kept spinning fastly before coming to a halt pointing towards the east, the opposite direction Gilrine went. "We are close to finding the flames. Come on." Victoria dragged Edith in the direction the compass was pointing. Meanwhile, Gaia and Michael regrouped on top of a banyan tree. They were far away from the girls. As far as they were concerned, the girls were collecting mushrooms as they were told. Michael was watching Gilrine navigating through the forest in the mirror in his hand with Gaia. "Where is he going?" frowned Gaia. "Let's find out." The duo shot out into the air like bullets. They avoided breaking branches or making any noises. Michael sent a drone in front for reconnaissance. Almost 10 minutes later, they landed on a tree branch. In the distance, they saw Gilrine standing under an oak tree. He was gawking around to see if anyone was following him. After making sure he wasn't followed, Gilrine took out a leather pouch from the inner pockets of his long, faded coat. He poured out a white powder from the pouch. He drew a W on the tree using the white powder. The oak tree's branches moved as several glowing symbols appeared on the stem. Looking at the symbols, Gilrine sighed with ease. "Thank the gods." All of a sudden, they heard a twig breaking nearby. Gilrine's body immediately tensed up as he started to look in all the directions. He then quickly wiped off the W on the tree. When he removed the symbol, the tree moved yet again to its previous state as the glowing symbols slowly faded away. Michael sent the drone in the direction of the noise. Michael cursed. "What?" asked Gaia. She did not seem very patient. It took great effort for her to stay put instead of jumping on Gilrine, knocking him out, and interrogating him to get the truth. "It's Wilkes," said Michael, "and he is not alone." Whoosh. Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind blew past them. Both Gaia and Michael almost lost their balance and fell off the branch. Gilrine was just about to take a step forward when he was knocked out by an invisible force. Gaia and Michael looked at Gilrine stumbling to the ground. For a split second, they saw a humanoid shape standing beside Gilrine before vanishing into thin air. "Tell me you saw that?" frowned Gaia. She could swear she saw a shape beside Gilrine who lay on the ground without moving a muscle. "See what happened to him." "Ill deal with Wilkes," said Michael before leaping towards the next tree. Just like him, she leapt from the branch and landed near Gilrine. Before squatting down to check on Gilrine, she looked around vigilantly. Until she was sure that the humanoid shape was nowhere near her, she remained vigilant. Still being vigilant, she squatted down, putting her finger on Gilrine's throat. She felt the pulses, but his body was cold. Quickly, she picked up the leather pouch. Before standing up, she took out a needle from her space ring with a flick of her wrist. She injected the needle into Gilrine's neck. "Stay down." Amidst the woods near the oak tree, Wilkes was bleeding on the ground. His face was all bruised up and a white bloody bone was sticking out of his forearm. Another youngster laid not so far from Wilkes, and compared to Wilax, he seemed to be in a much better state. "I only wanted to kill one bitch. But now I have to kill a bitch and a maggot." It was Decker who just spoke these words. Yesterday, after Victoria beat the crap out of him, he was found by Professor Lane. In front of the most terrifying professors in Mazeroth, Decker's lackeys crumbled, spewing everything they heard from Victoria. Professor Lane did not immediately take any action. He just gave Decker a truth pill and interrogated him. The pill prevented Decker from lying. Hence, he admitted to violating and killing his fiancée. Professor Lane expelled him on the spot and gave him 2 days to get his affairs in order before leaving Aquilon Realm. Decker had no affairs to settle except dealing with Victoria. Learning Victoria received detention, Decker was waiting for the 2 girls in the Black Forest when he saw Wilkes. Wilkes was already in a bad shape when he saw him. Since Wilkes too saw Decker, Decker planned to take him out before he informed the professors. Decker did not want the professors to find out what happened to Victoria and Edith. And here I thought coming to Mazeroth was the best thing in my life. Wilkes coughed up blood. Weirdly, he was laughing for some reason. He always thought he was going to achieve something bigger, but now he realized his life was a bit anticlimactic. As his last wish, he just wanted to bring the gods' wrath on those elves who kidnapped him from 60SAX's room and mercilessly beat the hell out of him. "You're not going to beg for me to let you live?" Decker asked while walking towards him with a crimson-red dagger in his hand. "Nah, I prefer to die with a bit of dignity." Wilkes coughed up some more blood. "Let me out." Suddenly a demonic voice reverberated in the area. The voice sent a chill running through Decker's body. He tensed as he frantically looked around. "Tear him, piece by piece, broke his limbs. I want to feel his warm blood between my fingers." As the demonic voice sounded closer and closer to them, Decker heard twigs breaking. He conjured an orb of light to see a figure walking out of the shadows. "You?" Wilkes couldn't believe his eyes. It was 66, his buddy, roommate, and who punched him in the face to get detention. Who are you?" "Go away," Michael growled. Seeing Wilkes bleeding on the ground reminded him of Jack's death. Although he avenged Jack, he could not save him. Michael sensed the third persona within him getting stronger, as though it was harnessing the power of darkness somehow. The last thing Michael wanted was to let the third persona take control of his body and wreak havoc in one of the most powerful places in the world. What the fuck are these prefects doing? Decker cursed the prefects for letting students sneak out to the Black Forest, which was supposed to be forbidden for them. Michael threw a healing potion to Wilkes. "Leave, once again," Michael warned Decker. "Let me out." Michael's eyes suddenly flamed up. A set of pitch-black armor replaced his green robes for a second. Whoa! Decker was stunned to see the voice was actually coming from the student in front of him. What shocked him more was his eyes and the way his looks changed. For a few seconds, he grew taller. A scary-looking armor appeared covering his body from head to toe, and his eyes were shooting crimson-red flames. "Buddy, I don't know what drugs you are on, but it's one spooky thing. What could one more body do to him?" thought Decker, hiding the crimson-red dagger behind his back. At this point, Wilkes was completely healed. He picked himself from the ground. "I'm not going to." Michael closed his eyes, mustering all of his strength to control the third persona. "Let you out." "Oh, you will. The demonic voice of the third persona once again growled. This time, it sounded as though it amused. Finally, Michael felt the urge to go berserk calming down within him, which was a sigh. The third persona went away. "Human, we have a problem," he heard Gaia's voice in his head. Michael took a long breath. Yet again, his third persona put him in a heap of trouble. Both Wilkes and the new guy saw him transform, and if either of them told anyone in Mazeroth about this, his life would be at risk. Wilkes could be dealt with easily, unlike the new guy. "We didn't see each other. Got it?" Michael asked Decker. Decker took a few minutes to ponder an answer. "Why not?" Michael snickered. "I don't believe you." The very next second, Wilkes saw 66 dashing at Decker. The next thing he knew, Decker was lying on the ground without moving an inch. "The hell are you doing?" Wilkes asked, looking at 66 tying Decker onto a tree. "Go back to the dorm," Michael said to Wilkes before injecting a needle into Decker's neck. Chapter 441: The Origin of Dark Lord. If I go back now, I will get caught by Professor Lane for sure. He is roaming outside the castle for some reason." Wilkes shook his head. "The host should bring him with you." Surprisingly, the system asked Michael to bring Wilax to the tree. Deep down, Michael too had a feeling that he might need Wilkes. Trusting the system and his instincts never went wrong. Hence, Michael chose to bring Wilkes with him to the tree. "Follow me." Considering Michael planned to make Wilkes his subordinate, he did not have to worry about the half-elf betraying him. Plus, Michael didn't think Wilkes would double-cross him, as he stood to gain nothing by betraying him. "What about him?" asked Wilkes, pointing at Decker. "Leave him." Wilkes didn't feel bad for leaving Decker alone. He barely knew the guy, yet he tried to kill him. If it was up to Wilkes, he would expel him before beating the crap out of him. Wilkes had no idea that Decker had been already expelled, and he was there to kill the ones responsible for his expulsion. When Wilkes and Michael reached the oak tree, Wilkes' eyes went wide. They looked as though they were about to pop out of their sockets. "What the heck?" Is that Gilrine? What happened to him? He frantically asked. As he was about to run towards Gilrine, he saw Professor Steinmeier stepping out of the shadows. Professor Steinmeier, Wilca's body went rigid in shock. What the fuck is he doing here? Asked Gaia, staring at Wilca's with murderous intent in her eyes. I'll tell you later. You said we have a problem. Rather than explaining what was the problem, Gaia walked to the tree, grabbed a handful of powder from the leather pouch, and drew the symbol W on the tree. Wilkas looked at the tree moving with his mouth wide open. He couldn't believe a giant tree such as this was moving like a puppet. It was too magical. Soon, dark lines appeared on his forehead because he was able to read the glowing runes, unlike Michael or Gaia. That's it, nothing happens. It will stay like this, and after 2 minutes, the tree will move back to normal. Gaia punched the tree in frustration. The system requires 500,000 badass points to disarm the runes. Since the host has only 160,000 badass points, the system could loan you the remaining amount for just a 40% interest rate, frowned Michael. But when he turned to look at Wilkas, he saw Wilkas staring at the runes as though he recognized them. Because Wilkas was a rune master, Michael realized he might have some ideas and he might not need the help of the system. Can you read them? I already did. Gaia finally stopped punching the tree and turned her gaze towards Wilkas. What does it say? Tell us. Gaia dashed at Wilkas. She grabbed him by his collar and lifted him off the ground. Professor, say it. Wilkas swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He had no idea why the professor was behaving like this. He even began to doubt if she was a professor at all. Put him down. Michael placed his hand on her shoulder, trying to calm her down. For him, it was just finding a solution for his third persona problem. But for her, it was about finding her mother. He knew how much her mother meant to her. Wilkas breathed heavily when his feet touched the ground. What does it mean? Asked Michael. Wilkas took a deep breath. They are ancient runes. They roughly translate into, the blood of evil shed by innocent opens the gate of darkness. What the fuck is that? Gaia threw her arms in the air. It seemed like a riddle, and Gaia hated the riddles so much, especially when her mother's life might depend on this riddle. The blood of evil shed by innocent opens the gate of darkness? Does it mean something to you? Asked Gaia after hearing Michael mumbling what Wilkas said under his breath. Stay here. In a blink of an eye, Michael disappeared, turning himself into a bolt of lightning. He came back dragging Decker with him. Gaia was confused. Shit, who is this? Wilkas. Michael looked at Wilkas. Maintaining the eye contact, he bent down to pick up the crimson-red daggers in Decker's sheaths. Kill him. Wilkas was startled by Michael's words. What do you mean, kill him? You have been bullied your whole life. This world will never stop treating trash until you choose to change the world. Your whole life, you've been hiding and fearing for others. Even coming to Mazorth didn't change your life like wanted, but Wilkas clenched his fist. Although his words made sense, Wilkas could not get himself to take a life. You can be a maggot as they've been calling you, or choose to man up and change your life around. If killing him would open whatever it is, let me kill him. Gaia tried to snatch the daggers, but she couldn't. Yes, let her do it. Why do you want me to kill him? I am not a killer. Michael was losing his patience. He was not in the mood to deal with Wilkas' naiveness. In this world, you can only be either a prey or a predator. Man up, kill him, and let me change how this world works, Michael said, gritting his teeth. Still, Wilkas shook his head. Michael lost his cool as he grabbed Wilkas by his neck. His eyes flickered dim red as the dark armor slowly started to appear on his body, replacing the green robes. Let me make this simple for you. Kill him or I will kill you and everyone you know in the slums you grow up. Wilkas' heart skipped a beat seeing his transformation. His voice sounded creepy and demonic, and his eyes were burning as though someone set them on fire. You don't understand what's at stake here, Wilkas. Gaia tried to knock some sense into Wilkas. If he doesn't do this, the whole world will suffer. Let him see his people suffer first. Give Azazel the order. Michael turned his fiery gaze towards Gaia. Stop. Finally, Wilkas shouted. He was an orphan, but he could not let the innocent people in the slums suffer. His hands shivered as he grabbed the daggers in Michael's hands. Don't hurt them, Wilkas stuttered. He was too afraid to curse at 66. The fear had clutched his heart thanks to the fear toxin Wilka's inhaled. Kill him, Gaia saw the runes losing their glow. She quickly moved towards the tree and drew the symbol once again. On the other hand, Wilka's clutched the dagger tightly. His body was shivering uncontrollably. Wilka's breathed heavily. He wanted to shout for help, but no words came out of his mouth. He saw no way to escape from this situation. His mind could not think of a plan. Do it, Michael growled in his demonic voice. Slowly Wilka's raised the dagger above his head. He clenched the dagger with his two hands. Kill him! This time when he heard the shout, Wilka's brought down the dagger, penetrating Decker's chest. The blood sprayed out of the wound. The beating heart of Decker pumped out the blood forcefully. In a couple of seconds, Wilka's pale face was painted red with Decker's blood and the ground beneath them was completely soaked in thick blood. Michael turned his head and saw the blue runes slowly turning red. The blood on the ground began to gather into a puddle. From the blood puddle appeared several extensions made of blood. Soon these extensions moved towards the tree like snakes. The ground beneath them trembled as they started to hear something heavy crack open. The center point of the oak tree slowly split open, revealing a spinning vortex. The vortex sucked in Decker's body. After his body disappeared into the vortex, Wilka's felt the pull. Gaia did not wait for the vortex to pull her in but dashed into it. Michael grabbed Wilka's by his collar and threw him into the vortex before he himself dashed into the portal. Michael had no time to wonder what was on the other side of the portal. The third persona had already taken control of half of his body and it took everything in him to keep it from completely manifesting. After the trio entered the portal, the tree returned to its normal state. And just before the last rune faded away, the humanoid shape made of leaves appeared in front of the tree. A split second after, the blood on the ground completely vanished along with the humanoid figure. Somewhere else in the Aquilon realm, Michael, Gaia, and Wilka's were free falling. Wilka's screamed out loud when he opened his eyes and realized that he was falling from the sky. Suddenly he felt a hand grab his shoulder and the next thing he knew, he landed on the ground safely. He let out a heavy breath. His vision slowly cleared as he didn't feel as terrified as before. He closed his eyes tight and opened them again, hoping everything that happened was just a nightmare. When he opened his eyes, he saw 66 and Professor Steinmeier walking in front of him towards a lone tree. He was not in his scary black armor as just a few moments ago. Wilka's looked around to see where he was. As far as he could see, there was nothing but floating mountains. The place he was standing on was paved and the only thing in the vicinity was the lone tree on the edge. While walking towards the lone oak tree, Gaia's body was shivering. The closer they got to the tree, the more they could make out a face in the tree. The god of darkness. Suddenly a calm voice reverberated in the area. I've been waiting for you for 3,000 years. Gaia looked closer at the tree to see the face talking. Finally, she had found the dark elf in the tree her mother asked her to find. She felt like she got a step closer to finding what really happened to her mother. Chapter 442 The Origin of Dark Lord II. Michael approached the tree while scanning the surroundings. His environmental scanning did not find any intruders or living beings. Who are you? Asked Michael, frowning. It was evident that this figure is the same one Gaia's mother was talking about, the dark elf in the tree. They should have known mortal arrays are no match for a god. The figure merged with the tree amused. I am Eladir, one of the founders of Order of Death and the man who created the ritual to open the gates to the Void Realm, the man spoke. Michael was calm, but when he heard what the dark elf said next, he was startled to the core. You may know the Void Realm as Earth. Michael halted his pace, staying still in shock. No one except Gaia knew about Earth, and that was because he told her. Except for her, only the system knew his origin. Michael stared at the dark elf to see how powerful he was, which resulted in another surprise as the dark elf was only at the body refining stage. God of darkness? Wilka's gasped hearing the dark elf. He couldn't simply believe 66 is a god as the figure stuck to the tree claimed him to be. You know about Earth. Since the dark elf clearly knew about the Earth, Michael did not try to conceal his secret. I know everything about you, Lucifer. I know you've been in war with yourself, A version of yourself more precisely, Eladir kept shocking Michael with his knowledge. Gaia remained silent, letting Michael get an answer for his problem from the dark elf. Then, she would inquire the elf about her mother. Michael, on the other hand, completely ignored the existence of Wilkas. He approached the elf and stood a couple of meters before the tree. "You came here looking for a fix for your problem, didn't you, Lucifer?" asked Eladir. "Tell me, how do you know about Earth?" Eladir looked at him for a few moments in silence. "Earth is the grandest and most secure prison in the entire universe, Lucifer. It was built to imprison and prevent you from coming here. Yet you are here. All those lives lost for nothing." Eladir sighed. Michael clenched his fist. He couldn't process the information given by the dark elf. His mind was in complete chaos. If what Elidi said was true, his entire life was a sham, and those who imprisoned him were punishing him for something he didn't even think of doing. Gaia was stunned as her mind went blank. She came to his side and placed her hand on his shoulder to reassure him because she knew his entire world was collapsing. "What about my parents on Earth? They were imprisoned too?" Michael's voice stuttered. For some reason, he felt a lump in his throat. It was too much for him to rationalize and process. He even started to sweat. To be honest, he wanted to sit down. "Have you met your parents on Earth?" asked Eladir as Michael slowly shook his head. "You have no parents on Earth. Your parents are from this world." Michael's heart skipped a beat. "Tell us who they are," asked Gaia immediately. "That's an answer only time can give you." Only silence filled the surroundings for a few moments before Michael opened his mouth. His eyes already began to flicker in crimson red. "Who imprisoned me?" asked Michael coldly. Gaia felt the air around her getting chilly. Soon, the sky started to turn darker and darker. The wind howled ominously, warning them about the approaching storm. "The same people who imprisoned me, Skyhall." Every time the elf opened his mouth, he stunned Michael and Gaia. It took them several minutes before speaking again. "Skyhall? You must be thinking the Guardians are the bad guys." "Cute," Eladir chuckled. Wilkas stood alone listening to their conversation. He was pretty freaked out by the sudden change in weather and the crimson red eyes of 66. His eyes were glowing in red as though they were rubies. "I want to know everything." Michael's entire world collapsed in front of him. Everything he knew and believed was said to be nothing but smoke and mirror. He was sick of being in the darkness and wanted to know everything about him and his origins from the dark elf. "The least I can do for you is give you some answers before I wither away." Eladir sighed as he began to narrate everything from the beginning, starting from 3,000 years ago. The story began 3,000 years ago with Qiu Jin ascending to the throne of Holy Maiden. Michael didn't know that Qiu Jin, one of the founders of Mazorth, was the Holy Maiden of Skyhall. She was a 6-star runemaster, and according to Eladir, at the peak of her power, she invented an array that let her soul travel through time. Her time travel adventure turned out successful, but not without a cost. The entire Skyhall was thrown into chaos when their beloved goddess returned from the future half dead. She was an immortal stage cultivator, yet something or someone almost took her life. She was never the same afterward. To let the world know about the approaching danger, she built another array with the help of her friends to let the Skyhall see the approaching calamity. The elders of Skyhall and a selected few witnessed a glimpse of the future. Eladir was one of the elders of Skyhall who watched the world fall into darkness. Qin Jiu called the future world the Dark Realm. There was neither sun nor moon in the Dark Realm. There was only utter chaos and darkness. People of the Dark Realm were stripped of their free will. They lived and died as mere cattle. In the world filled with darkness, only one stood atop and ruled the Dark Realm with an iron fist and dread, the Dark Lord. Qin Jiu was terrified of his power. She claimed even the gods left the universe fearing the Dark Lord's powers, and the only way to stop the Dark Lord was to imprison the Dark Lord before he reached the pinnacle of his power. Eladir and the other elders were aware of Earth, but they did not know how they created a void universe. There were records of it. Qin Jiu's words turned out to be the prophecy, and each of the selected few who witnessed the glimpse of the future created a great clan of their own to protect the world and prepare for the great war against the Dark Lord. What they witnessed pushed the Skyhall to take drastic measures. They scoured the world for the Dark Lord. They massacred anyone who slightly deviated from the path of good in the name of the greater good. After the disappearance of Qiu Jin, the once protector of the world slowly turned into something they were supposed to fight against. Some believed Qin Jiao died due to the injuries she suffered during her time travel, some believed she went back to the future again, and some believed she ascended to the realm of angels after reaching the celestial stage. No matter the reason behind her disappearance, it resulted in Sky Hall building prisons, mass graves, torturing thousands of people, and wiping out entire races they deemed evil. Eladir along with some other elders couldn't stand and watch doing nothing. They defected the Sky Hall but not before Eladir finished a ritual that would open the gate to Earth. Eladir and the others saw the Sky Hall turning the world into the Dark Realm without even the Dark Lord. Hence, they worked in the shadows to put a stop to the madness. As time went by, they were called the Order, and when the Sky Hall found out about them, they branded the Order as the Order of Death. Although the Order of Death was powerful, they couldn't stop Sky Hall from capturing the founders of the Order, including Eladir. Eladir believed some escaped, but he wasn't fortunate. The Sky Hall marked him as the traitor and chained him to the tree, chaining him with powerful curses. He was to suffer all the eternity alone. And 21 years ago, I felt the portal to the earth open and I knew, they found you. How do they know for sure it's the Dark Lord they found? Asked Gaia. She was burning with overwhelming rage for what they did to Michael. Qin Jiao left the Sky Hall the means to locate the Dark Lord. 19 months ago, I felt the gate to Earth open again. Only this time, no one was sent to Earth. On the contrary, you came here. This means Qin Jiao was right. It was you who sent to Earth 21 years ago, and there is no mistake. You are the Dark Lord. The armor of Lucifer had completely covered his body along with the cloud of darkness. He transformed into a complete Lucifer form without his control. My parents, what happened to them? Michael growled. Gaia felt a chill as his voice had never sounded more demonic and cold like this before. The ritual required your ties to be cut off. The strongest tie of them all is the bond between you and your family. To cut the bone, your family had to give you away willingly, and since they sent you to Earth they didn't abandon me, Michael interrupted as the area grew darker. Wilkes was shivering seeing what was happening in front of him. He was in total shock. If he had seen a way to escape, he would have already called for help because it was too freaky. They gave me away willingly. Michael looked up at the sky. Tears rolled out of his eyes, and seeing the tears, Gaia couldn't hold back her tears. This was the first time she had seen him shed tears. In the corner of his heart, he always believed his parents didn't abandon him but forced him to leave him for some reason. His belief was shattered as he realized they gave him away willingly. If the Sky Hall was capable of genocide, they were also capable of torturing his parents. What if they killed his family? Gaia asked Eladir. Gaia would rather hear his family was killed than give him away willingly. She knew how much pain he was going through. The ritual doesn't work that way, and killing his family would not cut the ties. The ritual was extremely powerful and volatile. Any mistakes or changes would have resulted in a calamity. What about Abras? The owner of this body? Is it a coincidence I ended up in him? Michael did not ask more about his parents. He got his answers. There was no need for him to know more. They willingly gave him away, and as much as it hurt him, at least his heart could be at peace. Chapter 443, The Origin of Dark Lord 3. Nothing is a coincidence when it comes to you, Lucifer. Have you ever wondered that out of millions of bodies, why you ended up in this particular body? Asked Eladir. Although the Dark Elf seemed to know a whole lot about him, Michael didn't think he knew about the system's existence. Under no circumstance, Michael would reveal the existence of the system. Therefore, instead of telling the system chose this body, Michael shook his head. He was oblivious to the truth behind why the system chose Abras. There was more than just a resemblance behind the system's decision to choose Abras. It's because this body belongs to you. Only souls could pass through the gates to Earth. It seems like a piece of your soul remained in your infant body. Eladir was not only a 5-star Ringmaster but also an expert in souls. He trained his mind and eye to see through a person as nobody could. Therefore, Eladir could see the broken soul inside Michael. You're saying he and the owner of the body are the same person? Asked Gaia while Michael remained, uttering no words. It was too much for his mind to process quickly. However, the more he thought about it, everything started to make sense. You are him and he is you. The two pieces of the soul are in peace. Eladir paused to look at both Gaia and Michael for a minute. Unlike the third piece, Eladir could see the third piece of the soul is at war with the other two pieces. It was preventing the two pieces of the soul from merging together. Something was amiss, but Eladir was unable to see what. Tell me how to fix him? Gaia rushed to Eladir. She grabbed what seemed to be his shoulder. However, Gaia could only feel wood, not flesh. Soon, the green leaves of the oak tree slowly began to dry and turn brown. The tree was withering. What's happening? Gaia stepped back. My time is up. I used what was left in me to summon you here. I am sorry I couldn't help you more, Lucifer. The path you walk. Eladir stopped talking as half of the tree withered completely. System, I need him. The system has found several curses on him that are binding him to this oak tree. The system also found an interference. It's temporarily blocking the curses and letting his soul depart from his body. In other words, he is successfully dying. I can see that, Michael grumbled. There are two ways to save him. One way will cost you 500,000 badass points. It will save him along with his body. The second option has several complications. First, it requires 180,000 badass points. Second, the host will have to find a new body as the system won't be able to save his body. Third, the body needs to be found in 5 minutes tops. Lastly, the body needs to be at least 10% genetic match with his dark elven race, and the body must not have any wounds when the soul enters the body. Michael listened to the system list all the requirements. For a few moments, he looked at Eladir and turned his gaze towards Wilkes, who was still in shock. I want a loan of 100,000. Shouldn't it be 340,000 points? The system asked with a surprised tone. At the moment, Michael had 160,000 badass points. Hence, to get 500,000 badass points, he needed 340,000 badass points as the system suggested. Do as I say. Take 100,000 badass points and buy the Soul Eater skill. Shit. The system was stunned. If the system had a face, the face would have shown an expression of utter shock. The acute pain in his head had appeared again. However, compared to the pain in his heart, the pain in his head was futile. Ding! The host has successfully acquired level 1 Soul Eater. The skill Soul Eater can be integrated with Energy Devour for 2,000 badass points. Does the host visit to L-World? Discover_new novels. Yes, Michael interrupted the system. After the system integrated the new skill he bought, it showed him his status in front of his eyes. Host, Michael Cultivation level, Core Strengthening Stage, Level 4 Experience Points, 70,000/600,000 badass points, 160,000, 40,000 badass points loan, skills and spells, Wind Blast, LVL6 Responsive Shield, LVL8 Environment Scanning, LVL6 Ignitia, LVL8 Lightning Dash, LVL6 Energy Devour, LVL2 Soul Eater, LVL1 Death Range, LVL3 Eyes of Darkness, Normal. Can sense the cultivation level of others' Eyes of Darkness, Lucifer. Can sense the cultivation level of others, can see through. Illusions Cloud of Darkness, Lucifer. Weak-willed enemies will lose their courage completely and surrender. Death range will be 50% more powerful, and if activated in darkness, the host's cultivation level will be boosted 4 levels up regardless of the stage barrier. Wordless Spellcaster, Lucifer. In full Lucifer form, the host just has to think of the spell to cast it. Techniques: Swords of Destiny, 98% Mastery Ring of Fire, 88% Mastery Serpent Maga, 97% Mastery Occupation. Core Disciple of Sunrise Sect, the Guardian of Sunrise Sect, Lord Lucifer of the Abyssal, the Dark Lord King of Bradford. This content is taken from L-World. Com status, healthy goals. Control the world, rebuild the Order of Death. Utility function, Banker, LVL 5, ratio, 1,000 gold coins, 40 badass points, runic teleportation, X-ray vision, also integrated with Eyes of Darkness, wealth, 15 million gold special trait, 5-star alchemist 4-star inventor subordinates, Gaia, warrior, loyalty level 100%. Raylene, 5-star chef, loyalty level 99%. Arya, assassin, loyalty level 68%. Heinberg, warrior, loyalty level 45%. Maxine, warrior, loyalty level 98%. Tiberius, warrior, loyalty level 55%. Sadie, loyalty level 40%. Ricky, loyalty level 98%. The Silent Reaper crew, pirates, loyalty level 90%. Base of operation, Sunrise Sect, the Abyssal, the Crypt Kingdom of Bradford Familiars. Nightmare, Forest Dragon, Vidora, Three-Headed Hydra. Michael noticed the bump in loyalty levels. But he was concerned about more pressing issues than loyalty levels. Soul Eater was a skill he was eyeing for quite some time to buy. He was in no rush to buy the skill until now. The reason he didn't buy earlier was that the price of Soul Eater was 60,000 badass points. Among all his spells, this was the deadliest and most powerful. Visit L-World. CHOM, for the best no_vel_eat_ing experience. At level 1, the Soul Eater can be only used on cultivators who are at least 2 stage below the host. Prepare to save Aladir. Host, what are you planning to do? The system had already guessed what he was about to do, yet the system asked the question because it was unbelievable. Quite honestly, the system didn't think he would do that. The surroundings started to move again after he exited the system as though they were being paused. Sporting his complete Lucifer form, he walked towards Wilkes. Wilkes was stepping back in fear. The closer Lucifer got to him, the faster his heart beat. Wilkes shivered as he looked up at Lucifer's crimson-red fiery eyes. Seeing him in his full armor, Gaia had a feeling that Michael was planning something. Pull another miracle human, she prayed in her mind. You've heard him. Michael began to talk to Wilkes in his demonic voice. Now you may have an idea of what I am capable of. Bend your knees and swear your loyalty to me. I will give you the blood of those who hurt you as one of the many gifts I have in store for you. Wilkes almost stumbled and fell on his back hearing Michael. Blood? I don't want any more blood on my dash. Wrong answer, Michael interrupted by grabbing Wilkes' neck. As expected, Gaia saw the half-elf being lifted off from the ground. The next moment, she saw the dark cloud of smoke shrouds Michael enveloping Wilkes. All of a sudden, Wilkes' body went rigid and his mouth opened wide. A bright stream of white smoke rushed out of Wilkes' mouth and went straight into Michael's mouth. Wilkes' body kept twitching violently. In a few blinks of an eye, his body stopped twitching. System Hayrace the body for Aladir. Soul transferring initiated. Gaia noticed a beam of light being shot out from Michael at Aladir. She felt the air being sucked out by the light beam. She took several steps back looking at the tree withering more and more. In a few moments, the tree had crumbled into nothing but ashes. When she looked at Michael, Wilkes' body moved yet again in his hand. Wilkes' eyes rolled back in his eye socket and stayed that way for a few moments. Michael put Wilkes on his feet again as the half-elf gasped for air suddenly. I am alive, Gaia heard Wilkes. She came to Michael's side as Wilkes kept looking at his arms and body as though he had never seen them before. Ding! Congrats to the host for killing a body-strengthening stage, level 2 cultivator. The reward is 10,000 experience points as well as 300 badass points. The Soul Eater has absorbed the soul of Wilkes. The host has received 20,000 experience points. The more tainted the soul is, the more the experience points, the system sounded in his mind. Absorbing the souls without battling wasn't the Soul Eater's powerful ability. What made the skill powerful and deadly was its power to turn the souls into experience points. As the system suggested, the more tainted the soul is, the more the experience points. In other words, absorbing an evil person's soul would give him more experience points than the soul of a lesser evil. You absorbed his soul. Gaia heard Wilkes, but something told her that the half-elf in front of her is not Wilkes. The Soul Eater was supposed to be used with Soul Stare, which would make the victim see their past transgressions, and it inflicts upon the individual the same pain they have caused to others. The Soul Stare skill required 300,000 badass points and Soul Strengthening Stage Level 8. He was naive and a spineless coward. He would rather live like a maggot than take the chance to change his life. I have no place for a person like him, on L-World. See, Meladir was truly stunned at the display of Lucifer's power. The curses put on him were unbreakable, yet Lucifer did not only lift the curse, but he also transferred his soul into another body. He had never heard of or seen a person who could perform such a feat. Now tell me how to deal with this third piece of the soul. Chapter 444 The Origins of Dark Queen. It was supposed to be daytime in the pocket dimension created to imprison Eladir, but because of Michael, the night had fallen early. Eladir was still familiarizing himself with his body. The last time he moved his limbs was almost 3,000 years ago. How do I defeat this third piece of the soul? Asked Michael. His mind was still processing everything Eladir had said. Yet, Michael focused on fixing the imminent problem first. The flame of vengeance was burning like wildfire inside him. He wanted to sacrifice everyone who wronged him in the past, present, and future. To achieve his vengeance, he needed to be in his best shape both physically and mentally. The third persona made being sane a difficult task recently. Hence, he wanted the third persona gone. You can't, Eladir shocked Michael and Gaia with his answer. It is a piece of soul, but it's your piece of soul nonetheless. You can't defeat yourself. I assume you have a solution, asked Michael. Luckily, Eladir nodded. After seeing the glimpse of the Dark Lord's power, Eladir was convinced that the Dark Lord would be able to destroy the Sky Hall. Defeating the Dark Lord would be near impossible, but if he stuck with the Dark Lord, he might be able to deviate the Dark Lord from destroying the entire world and turn this world into the realm of darkness they saw in the future. Compared to the Dark Lord, the Sky Hall seemed more evil. Over the years, he had seen the Sky Hall do all kinds of forbidden acts in the name of the greater good. They were not directly done by Sky Hall but their puppets. Moreover, Eladir wanted nothing but to see Sky Hall destroyed. How would anyone feel if someone imprisoned them for 3,000 years? Over the years, the elders of Sky Hall tortured him and exterminated his entire bloodline. They hunted his descendants and family like dogs. He wanted revenge, and the one person who was capable of destroying the Sky Hall was the Dark Lord. First, we have to extract the piece of the soul out. In the soul state, it can't be defeated, so we need to cage the soul into a vessel. The vessel needs to be extremely powerful to contain the soul. Finding the perfect vessel and caging the soul into the vessel will be the easy part. Eladir paused for a moment and went on. In physical form, the soul would be many-fold powerful. You need another being strong enough to weaken it. Then, you can absorb the soul piece and it will be merged with the other soul pieces and your soul will become whole once again. Eladir couldn't see the expression on Lucifer's face through the mask. After remaining silent for a few moments, Eladir said, "The question is who is powerful enough to defeat a piece of the Dark Lord's soul? We have to find a vessel to contain the soul," Michael said to Gaia and turned his gaze back to Eladir. Try the L-World. Com platform _for the most advanced reading experience. Tell me, how do we extract the soul piece out of me? Gaia already guessed who was in his mind to face the soul piece. Surprisingly, Eladir also knew the person who was in Michael's mind. Thanks to this new body, I can now create an array to help you. But we can't create the array here. We should do it in the Black Forest during the full moon night. As he said, Eladir walked towards where the oak tree was. Eladir squatted near the tree and grabbed a handful of mud from the ground. He threw the mud in the air as the dust formed a ring in the air. Soon the circle transformed into a vortex just like the one they used to come to this place. After you, Eladir gestured at Michael to walk into the vortex first. Michael looked around as the black armor disappeared from his body. The green robes of house alchemists once again covered his body. When they stepped out of the vortex, they saw Gilrine still lying on the ground unconscious. Eladir took a deep breath as though he was tasting the air and freedom. Tell me, what do you know about my mother, Adelia Ashton? Gaia didn't even think that he has been imprisoned in the pocket dimension for 3,000 years. She couldn't hold back as she desperately wanted to know what happened to her mother. The paralyzing agent mixed with the knockout potion would keep Gilrine unconscious for at least 12 hours unless he received the antidote. He was in no rush to wake up Gilrine. Hearing Gaia's question, Eladir turned his gaze from the night sky to her. A few seconds later Eladir heard Gaia. He frowned. He stared at Gaia from top to bottom. He walked towards her, looking her directly in her eyes. "You have her eyes," Eladir's voice broke as his eyes watered. Michael could see the great pain in his eyes. "Her? You saw my mother?" Eladir shook his head. "Your ancestor, one of the founders of the order, Edwina Wraith. You have her eyes." Eladir gently brushed Gaia's face. She didn't move or take his hands away because deep down, she too felt a connection with Eladir. Ashton is an alias used by her. I guess her descendants used this alias as their family name. Eladir smiled slightly. "Tell me, what do you know about my mother? Where is she? Is she alive?" asked Gaia with the hope of finally getting an answer about her mother. Michael didn't interrupt. He remained silent, letting her ask all the questions she wanted while checking out his surroundings. Besides, he himself was in utter shock. Visit to Elworld. COM discover_new novels. How is my family related to your order and him? She pointed at Michael. "You don't know?" Eladir was surprised. Gaia shook her head. "Your ancestor Edwina was a founder of the order. She served the order and the Dark Lord. During the last stages of the war, she made sure the elders who were essential to finding the Dark Lord could escape the Guardians and the Sky Hall. When everyone was afraid of the Dark Lord, she was the only one who believed that he might be what this world needs. So together we came up with a rune that would pass the secrets about the order and the responsibility of the wraiths to her descendants." Gaia's face was blank as she didn't know how to react. She thought her mother had somehow meddled with the order, yet she never expected her entire bloodline would be the servants of the Dark Lord and her ancestor was one of the founders of the order. When a wraith dies, a piece of their soul would be left behind to pass on the secrets to the next of kin. If you hadn't seen it, that means your mother is still alive, Mom. Gaia's eyes watered up, but this time, it was filled with tears of joy. She couldn't stop herself from grinning. "My mother is alive?" asked Gaia, tears rolling on her face. "That rune was one of my best works. So I am sure." Gaia leaped at Eladir and hugged him tightly. He had given her the best news in many, many years. She did not even dare to think he might be lying or wrong. Deep down, she always felt as though her mother was still out there somewhere. "I need to find her. How do I find her?" She was still hugging him. "You can't, no one can." When she heard Eladir, her smile froze as she let him go. She took a step back to see Eladir sigh. "Your mother is a wraith. When a wraith doesn't want to be found, no one can find them. You can't hunt a huntress. Wherever she is, she must be hunting someone. Try the L world. So platform_4 the most advanced reading experience." Somewhere else in the Black Forest, Victoria and Edith were standing among numerous dead mountain trolls. They were in a dark dungeon dimly lit with torches. In addition to mountain trolls, there were countless dried bones and skeletons. Unlike Victoria, who remained calm, Edith was breathing heavily. "Is it over?" "I think so, but don't let your guard down." The sword in Victoria's hand was not made of any metal. Her sword could not even be compared to the swords in this world. Any blade would be cut in half by her sword because it was made of pure cosmic energy. The emerald green energy sword radiated frightening power. At the end of the dungeon was a metal gate with several glowing runes. Victoria cautiously walked towards the gate, expecting a trap to appear any second. They had faced countless traps, skeleton guards and mountain trolls, and undead. Yet, nothing could stop Victoria and Edith. They came prepared and she overwhelmed everything with her cosmic energy. Edith's runes enhanced already god-level powerful Victoria to another level. The mountain trolls and the skeletons stood no chance against her. Unexpectedly, they faced no more traps or enemies on their way to the gate. "What do they say?" Looking at the glowing runes, Victoria asked Edith. "Darkness is not the opposite of light." Edith began to slowly translate the runes. "It is just the absence of light. The place where light and dark begin to touch is where miracles arise." "It doesn't make any sense. Does it say anything about how to open this gate?" Victoria asked, running her hand on the gate. The moment she touched the gate made a loud, creaking noise. They immediately stepped back as the gate slowly opened to reveal what they were looking for, the primordial flame. The hall before them was lit with blue flames on braziers on each corner. In the center of the hall floated two orbs of fire, a pure white flame and a pure black flame. Two primordial flames. Victoria and Edith were startled. They never expected to find two primordial flames in one place. Anyone else in Victoria's place would have gone crazy with excitement. She, however, had a frown on her face. Edith noticed the dark lines on her forehead and asked, "Visit L-World. See OM for a better reading experience." "Vicky, what's wrong?" "This is too easy," Victoria muttered. Chapter 445. The Primordial Flames. The two primordial flames were hovering in the air next to each other. Victoria could feel the power being radiated by the two flames. Victoria closed her eyes as a wave of golden energy shot out from her. The wave of cosmic energy scanned the room for any traps. The lines on her forehead became darker, seeing the cosmic energy activates no traps. Although the cosmic energy activated no traps, Victoria still expected a trap to appear any second when she was making her way towards the primordial flames. The primordial flames didn't react to the intruders. Victoria was informed that the primordial flames have a mind of their own. In the world there were only three primordial flames: Cold Flame, Hell's Flame, and Heaven's Flame. Only a few knew the myth of the existence of the fourth primordial flame, the Dark Flame. Victoria recognized the white flame as the cold flame. A golden layer enveloped both Edith and Victoria to prevent the coldness radiating from the white flames from penetrating their bodies. Unlike the cold flame, she felt nothing from the black flames hovering beside the cold flame. "How do we take them with us?" asked Edith. She was overwhelmed by the power of the flames. "Do you recognize this flame? It's definitely not the Heaven's Flame, must be the Hell Flame. Let's take them and get out of here before anyone notices our disappearance," Edith said to Victoria. With a nod, Victoria reached out to grab the two flames. The golden cosmic energy enveloped her hands as she approached the flames. Victoria felt a sudden pressure pushing her away. The pressure created a force field around the cold flame. She gritted her teeth, pushing her hand towards the cold flame. "Arg!" She growled in pain, but she was far from giving up. She was using all of her cosmic energy to get her hands on the flames literally. Edith saw Victoria's face start to go pale, and soon, her blood dripped through her nostrils. Still, Victoria was fighting through the force field to reach the flames. The blood spurted out of her nostrils after a few moments. Finally, her finger touched the cold flame, and just as her finger touched the flame, it exploded, throwing Edith and Victoria onto the walls behind them. "Arg!" Victoria growled in pain. The entire dungeon shook due to the force of their collision with the walls. When she looked up, her pain disappeared, but instead, a complete, utter shock occupied her heart. The flames hovering in the air a few seconds ago were nowhere to be found. The flames just disappeared. She jumped back to her feet. The utter shock was written all over her face. She frantically looked around to locate the flames, but to no avail. Looking for the flames, she walked towards Edith to get her up. "Vicky," Edith stood up holding Victoria's hands. "The flames?" Boom. Before Edith could get an answer from Victoria, the entire dungeon began to tremble. The ceiling above them crumbled, falling down on them. "We have to go." Victoria knew there was no time for them to linger around. Their lives were more precious than the primordial flames. While the dungeon was crumbling like a house of cards, they ran as fast as possible. The flame of anger burned inside Victoria hotter and brighter. If she had absorbed the primordial flames, she and her father would have reached a pinnacle of power sooner than they initially planned. The most up-to-date NOV_Ls are published _here L-World. Only the primordial flames were powerful enough to be equal to the cosmic energy. That was why her father was hunting for the primordial flames. Absorbing the primordial flames would ensure their everlasting domination. Even though they were running for their loves, Victoria took out the compass that had the ability to locate the primordial flames to find where the flames went. Unfortunately, the compass was broken due to the previous collision. The needle was broken in half and the glass was shattered. Damn it! Meanwhile, in the Black Forest, Gaia injected the antidote into Gilrine to wake him up. Michael and Eladir left the area to resume connecting the Blackfoot mushrooms. Arg! Gilrine jolted. He was breathing heavily, and when he saw Gaia squatting beside him, his face went pale. What happened? Gaia asked, pretending not to know anything. Great, I will tell Headmistress Kayla that you were busy sleeping in the middle of the fucking Black Forest. Gaia punched Gilrine on the shoulder. No, I wasn't sleeping, I saw something. Move your ass, we have to get them back to the castle. Gaia didn't linger around but walked away from Gilrine. Gilrine stared around him with a pale face. He quickly checked his pocket to see if the pouch was still there. He was relieved to find the pouch in his pocket just as he left. He could swear he saw something before he lost consciousness. Once again, before following Professor Steinmeier, Gilrine went to the tree and checked if there was something amiss. Did something happen? Nah, what am I thinking? No one can walk past the headmaster's defenses, Gilrine mumbled under his breath. The two girls along with Michael and Eladir were collecting Blackfoot mushrooms when Gaia returned. She had no idea Victoria and Edith almost absorbed the primordial fires. That's enough, Gaia clapped. Your detention is over. Let's go back to the castle. On their way back to the castle, no one uttered a word. Eladir was staring at everything with an amazing look on his face. Victoria was frustrated by her failure. Edith was pretty shaken up by nearly getting crushed to death. Gilrine was contemplating what just happened back and what made him lose consciousness. And lastly, Gaia, she was having mixed feelings. On one hand, she was happy beyond words because of her not-so-dead mother, and on the other hand, she was worried about her mother's safety. Michael's mind was drifting. Many memories he experienced on Earth as Ghost and in this world as Abras flashed across his eyes. Realizing that Abras and he was the same person established a harmony between the soul piece of Ghost and the soul piece of Abras. It was extremely difficult for him to keep calm instead of going berserk. Go to your dorms. After reaching the castle grounds, Gaia asked them to part ways. The latest understudies are on the L-World. Zoom website. What about these mushrooms, Professor? Asked Edith. Gaia almost forgot about the Blackfoot mushrooms in her deep thinking. Just give them to Gilrine. Gaia left the students to go to her room. Just like Michael, she also wanted to be alone. Eladir was smiling on their way back to their dorm rooms. The memories of him being a student flooded his mind. He had many happy memoirs in Mazeroth. You're an alchemy student? Even after thousands of years, Eladir still remembered the way to each house's dorm room. I think you'll go to Runemaster's house. You need some time alone, Eladir said as Michael opened the door to his room. I know the way. Michael just nodded as Eladir turned back and left. When Michael stepped into his room, Nightmare was waiting. Michael did not utter a word. He just flicked his wrist as a punching bag attached to a stand appeared in the center of the room. System, did you know? Michael asked in his mind, standing before the 6-feet punching bag. The system level is too low. His fist clenched as he breathed heavily in anger. The next moment, he willed the system to soundproof the room. Nightmare noticed a dim light appear in the room. Sky-halt boom. Michael punched the bag with enough force to create a loud booming sound. Guardians, the punching bag received another hit. Nightmare wanted to ask what happened, but seeing the murderous look and the flickering red eyes, he stayed back. Chin Geo, visit L-World. Him for a better user experience, Andreas, Victoria. Thugia. He started to punch faster and faster. The force of his punches shook the room as several cracks began to form in the punching bag. Nightmare noticed the lights in the room go out as the room was soon engulfed in darkness. Let me out, the voice of the third persona sounded in his mind. It was laughing at him, which made him more furious. You can't keep me locked forever. I am you, shut up. Nightmare almost bounced hearing his sudden shout. As Michael was struggling to keep his anger and the third persona contained, Eladir reached the room assigned to Wilkas in the House of Runemasters. The rooms of the Runemasters made alchemy students' rooms look like a shabby basement. The common room Eladir was standing in was a wide, circular room, airier than the common room of Alchemy House. Graceful arched windows punctuated the walls, which were hung with blue and bronze silks. By day, the Runemasters would have a spectacular view of the surrounding mountains. The ceiling was domed and painted with stars, which echoed on the midnight blue carpet. There were tables, chairs, and bookcases, and in a niche opposite the door stood a tall statue of white marble. Eladir didn't give a shit about the elves and the others' gazes on him. As a dark elf, he went through the same bullying as Wilkas. However, unlike Wilkas, Eladir fought back and showed the bullies how it would feel to be bullied with his superior talents. Maggot, filth, why does he have to be a rune master? I thought he stayed with the alchemists? Eladir walked towards the sofa in the center of the room and plunged into the comfy sofa. It had been thousands of years since his butt rested on a sofa. Leaning back on the sofa, he put his leg over another. The elves were surprised. They couldn't take him being arrogant in front of them. Filthy maggot, from the elven gang, an elf walked towards Eladir with the intention to throw him away. The elves who got their butts kicked by Michael were standing in the corner smiling. He was not in the House of Alchemy but the House of Runemasters. You can find the rest of this content on the L-World platform. They were excited to see the half-elf get beaten. Little did they know that the half-elf they knew was no longer in this world. The one occupying his body was a several thousand years old 6-star Runemasters. Chapter 446 Something that could kill the Dark Lord. Everything has changed except you half-minded idiots. Eladir shook his head disappointedly. He leisurely grabbed the goblet on the side of the table to quench his thirst. The elves were having a bit of a party, so the goblet was filled with red wine produced from the nearby village. Despite the goblet's simple look, it was heavy and imbued with a rune that made the goblet near impossible to break. Ignoring the approaching elf, Eladir took a little sip of wine. His body jolted when the red wine touched his taste buds. I can't say I didn't miss this. Eladir took a long sip and in a few blinks of an eye, he emptied the goblet. You have some bang? The Runemasters who were looking at the elf dashing at the half-elf stumbled down. They couldn't realize what just happened. The half-elf was drinking wine, the elf was dashing at him. The next thing they saw was the elf collapse to the ground. Only a few seconds later they noticed the crushed goblet in the half-elf's hand. They finally realized that the half-elf hit the elf with the goblet with enough force to not only knock down the elf but also crush the goblet itself. The amount of force required to crush the goblet was not a joke, yet the half-elf crushed it by hitting the elf in the head. The elf was grumbling on the ground in pain. He held his head as blood drenched the floor beneath. However, his agony became more painful when Eladir stepped on the elf's throat, increasing pressure little by little. If you assholes want to spend your lives being racists, knock yourselves out. But when I'm here, I don't want to hear a single snarky comment about me or my race. Few of the elves couldn't see a fellow elf being crushed by a half-elf in front of their eyes. Hence, they dared to attack the half-elf. Fighting in the common rooms was not a big deal until no one informed the prefects about the fight. They doubted that even if the prefects knew they beat up a half-elf, they would give a damn about a maggot. After all, the prefects of House Runemasters were also elves. The elves were a couple of feet away when a sudden vibration reverberated in the room. The elves halted their steps. Their golden hair produced smoke as the smell of burning hair permeated the room. Eladir snapped his finger and the elves began to tremble violently. Their robes smoke as they crumbled down, leaving the elves naked. Their golden skins soon turned as red as ripe tomatoes. Visit L-World. See Hyoam. For the best experience, the other Runemaster witnessing the scene with startling faces looked down to see a glowing chakra on the floor where the elves were standing. When did he place the rune? What rune is that? So powerful, how did he do that? The onlookers were stunned beyond words. Eladir snickered inside, seeing how a basic level rune could surprise these amateurs like this. The energy in his soul deteriorated over the years, and once a half-immortal stage cultivation was now a mere body-refining stage cultivator. Until Eladir could cultivate to become stronger, he would only be able to use mediocre runes. Nonetheless, these basic runes were enough to keep the elves from annoying him in his time at Mazeroth. Next time, "I'll burn the thing between your legs," Eladir threw aside the goblet before making his way towards his room. The elves who were being electrocuted collapsed to the ground finally when Eladir snapped his fingers again. "Now someone shows me my room," he evilly grinned, which sent a chill through everyone's spines. Somewhere else on the Azer continent, Noah was trekking through a snowy mountain. As far as one could see, there was nothing but milky white snow and crystallized ice pikes that were sharp as daggers. The howling sound of the wind was the only thing that accompanied them while the blowing wind brushed past their bodies with enough force to knock them down at any moment. "Arg, I miss flying," Noah sighed but kept trekking through the snow. "And I miss a roof above my head and something that saves my Harry but from freezing," the golden Babaru, Norvin, curled up inside Noah's inner pockets. The monkey made a comfy home of his long coat's pocket but still bitched about the weather. "You should have brought Alicia instead of me. She must have loved being literally cold." "We are close, Noah," Andreas' voice sounded in his head. "Shoo," Noah shushed Norvin quickly. "The old man inside the ring talking to you again?" Norvin rolled his eyes, being annoyed by getting shushed. Founders so current _novel on Elworld. See, apart from Noah, Norvin was the only one who knew the existence of Andreas. Just like the dragons, Norvin's race, the Golden Babarus also possessed the skill to view the world differently. After Norvin reached the core formation stage, he sensed a living being in Noah's ring. His suspicions were confirmed when Noah was stuck in an unwinnable fight and Andreas had to manifest to save him. "Conjure the heaven's flame." Hearing his mentor's voice, Noah closed his eyes as an emerald green flame shot out of his hand. The green light lit their path. "Look," Norvin quickly pointed out at the runes on their path to the top of the mountain. "We are on the right path," Andreas was excited. It was the first time he sounded excited since they found the location of the Dark Lord. The failure to apprehend the Dark Lord still haunted both Noah and Andreas. They were so close to capturing him, yet he outsmarted him by using Noah's family as hostages. What happened that day made Noah realize what the Dark Lord was capable of and the necessity to eliminate him. What they were seeking could help in doing just that. They followed the runes to the top of the mountain. Noah climbed the mountain with new vigor, seeing he was close to the weapon that could slay the Dark Lord. "Tell me why we can't fly up again?" asked Norvin, feeling tired just by seeing Noah climb the mountain. "Using arch energy will activate the traps," Noah answered while climbing higher and higher. The higher he climbed, the colder it got. The runes led him to a dead end where he saw nothing but a stone wall in front. I thought a door or a pathway would appear," Norvin rubbed his hairy chin. "Teacher," Noah called out Andreas standing in front of the wall where the runes are glowing. "These are Lady Qingjiu's runes, there is no doubt." Andreas' ethereal figure manifested out. While Andreas was studying the runes, Noah conjured a ball of heaven's flame and sent a stream of emerald green flame towards the wall. The wall didn't open as Noah expected, but a bright beam of light shot out within the wall toward Noah. Noah's instincts made his legs dash out of the way, yet the bright beam was too fast and Noah was standing too close to the wall. Unexpectedly, the bright beam of light shot through Noah, doing no harm to him. "The God of Light," a sweet feminine voice echoed through the snowy mountain. The showering snowy rain stopped all of a sudden as though someone pushed the pause button. The mountain before Noah slowly split open to reveal a grandiose hall. Noah stepped into the hall as the mountain closed up behind him. The 11 braziers on each side of the hall lit up, brightening the hall. A snowy white carpet materialized under Noah's feet to the end of the hall as he cautiously took his steps forward. There were 4 12-feet statues made of ice stood majestically. 2 of the statues were female while the other 2 were male. Despite their gender difference, the 4 of them looked extremely dominant and mighty. "Who are they?" asked Norvin in amazement. Updated _ @Elworld. The 4 great legends. Norvin saw Andreas' ethereal form bow towards the statues. His eyes were full of reverence as though he was worshipping them. Archer Crook, Ingrid Stenham, Chiojin, and Karjan Pavlovich, Archer Crook, the heavenly warrior. Andreas looked at the statue of a man in battle armor. He was holding a sword in one hand and a spear in another. Andreas turned his gaze to the statue of a graceful smiling lady who held a tiny bonsai tree in her hand, Ingrid Stenham, the legendary 6-star alchemist. Her talents were beyond any star levels. The legend has that a drop of the healing potion brewed by her could heal an army to their full health. He turned around to look at the statue of a long-haired muscular man with a hammer, Karjan Pavlovich. The only human 6-star blacksmith this world has ever seen. Finally, they all turned their eyes to the statue of a lady in qipao. Her hair was tied into a bun and unlike the rest of the statues, she was looking at the stone table at the end of the hall. Qin Jiao, the woman who saw the future, the mother of the great prophecy, Noah was surprised to see Andreas kneel down in front of her. "We won't fail you, Lady Qin Jiao," Andreas said, letting out a deep breath. After saying those words, the trio cautiously walked toward the stone table. They expected to spring a trap any second, but they never did. When they reached the stone table, they saw 2 hand imprints on the table. "I have a feeling you two should place your hands on the marks," Norvin exclaimed. Andreas and Noah looked around. There was nothing except statues and the stone table in the hall. "Shall we?" Noah believed those who were called him here. They had no intention to harm him. If they had, they would have done it by now. Therefore, he placed his hand on the stone table and so did Andreas. Nothing happened for a moment, but soon, the hall trembled as they noticed the heads of the 3 legends slowly turning towards them. From each of them, a bright beam of light shot out at Noah. Finally, a golden light shot out from Qin Jiao's statues. When the 4 light beams met at the center of the stone table, the same voice they heard before sounded again. "Find the other 4 arrows and vanquish the darkness." From the 4 lights emerged an arrow that radiated an immense amount of power. The arrow was made of no metal but light. Noah gently grabbed the arrow, and the moment he touched the arrow, it disappeared into him. He sensed the arrow within him, in a form of energy. Visit lworld.com for a better user experience. "We are one step closer to ending him, teacher," Noah grinned. Chapter 447 The Dark Lord from the Future. The next day, Gaia attended the combat class only to see Michael absent. Eladir was there, sitting on the last bench as Wilkus. For Gaia, what Eldery revealed was joyous news to be celebrated. After all, she had learned that her mother is still alive. But for Michael, it was devastating. Everything he knew and experienced turned out to be a sham. His entire life was controlled by a prophecy he never wanted to be a part of. In a short amount of life, he had faced so many betrayals and even worse, betrayal by his own family and the girl he loved, Victoria. She knew how he was feeling, a puppet, a boogeyman created by the Sky Hall. If he was what they claimed, he wouldn't have saved her, Raylene, Christopher, and revived a dying sect to live. Regardless of his intentions, he saved more people than a typical guardian. The thought of Sky Hall and the Guardians pushing him on the path to become the Dark Lord and dictating his life pissed off her. He always acted calm even when the odds were against him, which happened rarely due to his caution and plans. She wasn't sure how he had been reacting. Her mind was boggled on her way to his room. Since she sent all the students, including the alchemists, out on training, no one saw her entering the House of Alchemists. Her heart was pounding faster and faster as she got closer to his room. Standing in front of his door, she took a deep breath. She rotated the wedding ring on her finger nervously. The room was ominously silent. The thought of him leaving her flashed across her mind, almost making her eyes water. She didn't know why she thought that, but the thought did come across her mind. Her hands shivered, moving towards the doorknob. When she finally opened the door, she was thoroughly shocked. She just stood in the doorway dumbstruck. Michael was doing push-ups rather than being sad or gloomy. The other surprising thing was he had the Lucifer armor on an armor stand. His naked upper body had smudges of black paint which indicated he had been painting the armor and modifying it. "Hey gorgeous," she saw him jump back on his feet. He walked to her with a wide grin on his face. wrapped his hand around her waist, pulled her closer, and locked her lips with his. For a man who should have been gloomy, he was way too cheery. "Hey human. What's going on?" "I've been busy modifying my armor and training." He flexed his muscles. Under normal circumstances, she would have gawked at his chiseled body with awe. He went back to the armor and attached the hidden blades to the sleeves. Michael, she was confused. She expected anything but this. He was so cheery than usual. "I was thinking that I should remove the cape." Gaia saw him rubbing his beard doubtfully. Visit to L-World. COM discover _new novels. Are you gone mad? His behavior creeped her out. Yesterday, he was so gloomy and silent. She was afraid that too much anger and sadness muddled his brain. Michael smiled, brushing the dust off of his armor. "What do you mean I was?" "Stop looking at that fucking armor and talk to me." She stomped the floor. Michael turned his gaze at her. A gentle smile appeared on his face. With a worried look on her face, Gaia walked to him. Her eyes expressed the concern in her heart better than her words and face. He cupped her face, gently kissing her forehead. "I was mad to try to run away from my destiny, Gaia. I always thought Lucifer is the mask and Ghost is real. But no, yesterday, I realized it was the other way around." Michael let her face go to put his hand around her neck. He walked towards the windows with Gaia. "Every time I put on the armor, I say to myself, this has to be done to make my life easier. The desire to control the world from shadows was just a fantasy of mine." He paused for a second as the dooms suddenly grew darker. "Now I realized it wasn't a fantasy, it was my destiny. Even after learning everything about the Order, the prophecy, what the Guardians did, I tried to run away from my destiny. I wanted to change it. But dread it, run from it. Destiny arrives all the same." Gaia sensed an otherworldly aura from him. Even the breathing became harder as she felt like being choked by the aura. "You're acting weird, Michael. You're not the Dark Lord they claimed you to be. You're better than that, I know you. If anyone is evil, it's the Sky Hall and Guardians. I am the Dark Lord nonetheless. Why try to avoid who I really am? If they had left me alone when I was born, I might have lived and died as an ordinary person. But they showed me the path to become something more, a god who could reshape this world to his own liking." The fear shrouded Gaia's mind as the light in the room continued to flicker. Soon the room fell pitch black. Manipulating the darkness was not a skill or spell he bought from the system. Rather, he felt as natural as breathing. His strength had gone through the roofs, and he sensed that he would be more powerful if he merged with the third piece of the soul. Just making peace with himself unlocked an ancient power in him. When the lights returned to the room, Gaia was staring at him with a pale face. New _chap _ are pub _lished on L-World. Calm, don't worry, Snakey. This is what the future me wants. Michael smiled, looking at the distant horizon. When he saw her face, confusion was written all over her face. Think about it, Gaia. Qinjiu went to the future and saw the Dark Lord. And who is the Dark Lord? You heard Aladir. I beat her to half-death but didn't kill her. That doesn't sound like me unless I let her live. You're saying you came from the future? It makes sense, doesn't it? How we met, the portraits of me in the dark forest, how I met Nightmare. Don't you feel like everything is connected? I don't care where you came from or from when you came, I'll be at your side as long as I'm alive. What if your family gave you away? I'm all the family you need. Gaia embraced him in a tight hug. She squeezed him, having no intention to let him go. Gaia jolted away from him when someone knocked on the door. It's me. Can I come in? Elidar's voice came from the other side of the door. Come in, said Michael as Eldri opened the door to come in. Am I interrupting something? Seeing the half-naked Michael and the tense body of Gaia, Elidar thought they were exploring the area of love together. Nope. Did you find everything you need? Elidar walked towards the armor of Lucifer hanging on the armor stand. He just looked at it from top to bottom before turning his gaze back at Michael. I had to go through some annoying conversations, but I managed to get everything. Now we just need a vessel and someone who could weaken the vessel with your soul piece in it. The latest _zodies are on _the L-World. CTOM website. With a flick of his wrist, Michael took out a tablet-size mirror from the system storage. He threw it at Eladir. "There is your vessel." Eladir looked at the mirror to see a mountain troll in it, but this mountain troll was nothing like the one he scared using his energy a day ago. The mountain troll in the mirror was on fire and had a pillar with scorching hot lava oozing down. A fire giant. Eladir had seen only a few in his lifetime. They were extremely rare and almost extinct from the world thanks to the Skyhall. They were one of the races Skyhall deemed as helping the Dark Lord. Thus, they almost wiped them out from the face of this world. A fire giant, you say? That thing crawled through a ruin far north from here, relatively closer to where we went to collect Blackfoot mushrooms. Gaia took the mirror from Eladir's hand and saw the fire giant sleeping. The snoring giant was a couple of times bigger and meaner than the mountain troll Gilrine loved. "We will let the fire and ice battle it out. In 2 days, I want my soul to be whole again." The ritual to extract the third piece of soul out had to be performed on a full moon day. Fortunately, the next full moon was in 2 days. The fire giant's appearance was not a coincidence but a result of Victoria's visit to the dungeon. She killed everything that guarded the dungeon except the fire giant. When the primordial flames left the dungeon, they woke up the slumbering giant. The giant was now tracking the primordial flames. Michael was oblivious to the intention of the fire giant. His first priority was to make his soul whole. He had a feeling that once his soul became whole again, his powers would grow exponentially. "What's the plan?" asked Gaia. "I will lure the fire giant to the ritual site. You make sure no one plays hero." Michael then explained the full extent of his plan to Eladir and Gaia. After hearing the plan, Eladir was quite surprised. The plan was simple but elegant and fail-proof. Slowly Eladir realized why a legend of a person such as Qinjiu shuddered to even utter his name. He had devastating power and a brain to outsmart his opponents. This was a deadly combination. Moreover, his soul seemed to be in peace unlike when he first met him. "What's the plan after you absorb the third piece?" asked Gaia. "Try the L-World. CTHOM platform_ for the most advanced reading experience." Farming badass points, Michael thought in his mind but only revealed a smile to Gaia. Chapter 448 The Alchemy Class and Bullies. Only 1 day remained until the full moon. To farm badass points and brew a potion that would attract the fire giant to the ritual site, Michael went to the potions class. Lucky for him, today was the first day of potions class. Potions lessons took place down in one of the dungeons. It was colder in the classroom than up in the main castle and would have been quite creepy enough without the pickled animals floating in glass jars all around the walls. The classroom was large enough to hold at least 30 students, their cauldrons, and their work tables. In the corner of the classroom was a basin into which icy cold water poured from a snake's mouth. A student supply cupboard could be seen in the room, along with a blackboard on which the professor could write formulae and recipes for potions and pills. Professor Lane's office and personal stores were adjacent to the potions classroom, and there was a room in the corner to access the office from the potions classroom. Michael felt weird carrying a set of books like a student. When he entered the classroom, he noticed that not only the classroom was gloomy but also the students looked gloomy. None of them dared to utter a word. As he liked, he went to the table at the far end of the corner from the professor's table. A copper cauldron along with a yellowish parchment laid on the table. "Hey," a brown-haired youngster next to Michael's table waved at him with a friendly smile. Since the youngster was sharing his table with orcs and beastmen, he seemed to be glad to meet a fellow human. Michael just nodded with a smile before reading the contents written on the parchment. Healing potion recipe. Michael immediately recognized the ingredients and what potion could be brewed using these ingredients. Another batch of baffling bumbling fools. A cold voice reverberated in the classroom. The students saw Professor Lane walking out of the door connecting the classroom and his personal office. Professor Lane Voldegard was a tall, thin man with pallid skin, a large, hooked nose, and a pearl-white set of teeth. He was dressed in flowing black robes which made him resemble an overgrown bat. He had shoulder-length, smooth black hair which framed his face in curtains, curling lips, and dark, penetrating eyes that resembled tunnels. When he entered the classroom, The already gloomy classroom turned gloomier. The most up-to-date NOV_Ls are published_here L-World. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of alchemy. As there is little fancy spell casting here, many of you will hardly believe this is sorcery. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through the veins, bewitching the minds, ensnaring the senses. I can teach you how to bewitch minds, turn water into gold, and even stay young forever if you aren't as big a bunch of fools as I usually have to teach. He sounded more like hissing than speaking. He had a waspish tongue that subtly spewed so much venom toward the students. In the very first class, he started to pour water over the students' fire to learn more. On your table, there is a list of ingredients. You have 30 minutes to concoct the pill. Whoever concocts the least bad will get to use the classroom after the class. I know it will be hard for you, but try not to make a mess. The students rushed to all corners to collect the required ingredients. No one stopped for a second to look around the classroom to locate the ingredients instead of rummaging through all the jars and plants. Let me show you kids how it's done. He was in dire need of badass points, which pushed him to show his greatness to everyone. When he first came to Mazeroth, he planned to stay anonymous, find the Dark Elf, and get some allies. Everything changed after he talked to Eladir. He was neck-deep in enemy territory. Although it was risky to show his true prowess, this was also a great place to earn thousands of badass points. Lane misdirected the students by saying concoct the pill. In reality, it was a potion. He wanted the students to figure it out. Looking at the students running around the classroom like headless chickens having no clue, he was disappointed but didn't seem surprised. He seemed as though he expected this. Among the headless chickens, Lane noticed Michael, who calmly walked around the classroom collecting the right ingredients using the correct methods. His blank face literally turned green when Michael conjured his alchemy flame in the middle of the class. The gloomy dark classroom was lit green by the fuming emerald green flames hovering over Michael's palm. "What the hell are you doing?" One female student who dropped her ingredient in shock shouted at Michael. Ignoring the girl, he threw the first ingredient into the alchemy flame. Professor Lane fixed his eyes on Michael. Unlike the students, he could see the control Michael had over the flames. The flames danced according to his will. One by one, Michael threw the ingredients into the alchemy flames. He walked towards Professor Lane, brewing the potion. The essence extracted from each ingredient hovered over the flames in the shape of glowing pearls. Finally, the sweet sound of notifications continuously rang in his mind. Whoa, full_new_episode_da on the L-World. COM platform. Who is he? He's not even using a cauldron. Look, he's almost done. Where is he from? The students were dazzled by Michael as he wanted. Even Professor Lane, who had a face void of emotions, looked a tad bit surprised. When he reached Lane's table, he held the flames and the essence balls in one hand and took a vial from the table using the other hand. The green flames slowly dissipated as the beads of essence flowed into the vial, blending together into a sparkling blue potion. Here you go, Professor. 90% pure healing potion. Michael placed the vial on the table with a proud grin. The classroom is yours. Others leave. Professor Lane left the room carrying the vial of healing potion Michael brewed. The students looked like fools with some ingredients in their hands. They did not even start their cauldrons yet Michael finished brewing the potion. Their first potion class ended quicker than they thought. After Lane left the classroom, all the students stared at Michael. Big brother, the girl who shouted at Michael approached him wearing a seductive smile. That trick doesn't work on me, sweetheart. Michael put an end to her flirting before it even began. If I heard the professor correct, he said everyone to get out of here. Current_novel on L-World. By giving the classroom to him, Lane saved hundreds of badass points. He could take advantage of the ingredients around the classroom to brew the potion to lure the fire giant to the ritual site. Seeing how coldly he handled the girl, the other did not dare to start a conversation with him. They branded him as the most arrogant one in the class within a few seconds. Michael couldn't care less about what they think of him. Most of the students here would serve the Sky Hall or any one of the great clans. Sooner or later, he might meet them on a battlefield. The last thing he wanted was to share his knowledge with his potential enemies. The ingredients to brew the bait potion were quickly found by Michael. He quickly started to brew the potion before Professor Lane returned. While collecting the herbs, he also collected seeds from the rare herbs Professor Lane had in his classroom. Michael did not linger in the classroom longer. As soon as he finished brewing the bait potion and some other potions and pills, he left the classroom. He had combat classes and spell casting after alchemy. However, since he finished the alchemy class within 5 minutes, he had some free time. The class was profitable as he earned almost 50,000 badass points. Still not enough, Michael sighed. He took a loan of 100,000 and before he could start spending the points, he wanted to settle his debt. I should go see how Nightmare is doing. When he stepped out of the classroom, he remembered Nightmare. The dragon was having his own classes with the magical beasts professor in the arena. With the help of a few markers, Michael made his way to the arena. The corridors and the courtyard were peaceful and captivating. He would hate to destroy this place if Mazorth chose to go to war with him. Somehow he felt they would stand in his way to domination. The path to the arena was adorned with yellow maple trees. The paved path was blanketed by the golden leaves and looked as though they were covered in pure gold. Michael was enjoying peace and tranquility. The arena was an oval-shaped pitch with hundreds of seats raised in stands around the pitch so the spectators were high enough to see what was going on. In the middle of the arena was something that resembled a cricket pitch. Currently, when he entered the arena through one of the many gateways, he saw countless creatures flying in the sky and running around the grass field. Try the L World. So platform _4 the most advanced reading experience. A group of students occupied the seats at the north end of the arena. Michael's face turned cold when he looked closer at them. Instead of flying in the sky or running around like the other dragons and the familiars, Nightmare was chained to a pole with a bunch of Espérenex cats. Besides Nightmare and Espérenex cats were a few first-year students. The first-year students seemed to be swimming on the ground. The group of students was adorned in the robes of house warriors. It wouldn't take a genius to figure out that the first-year students in Nightmare were being bullied and ragged. Chapter 449 Spellcasting Class. Although Michael saw Nightmare being bullied, he didn't intervene. He just turned and left the arena, but not before taking a long look at the bullies. 4 guys and 1 girl. The one who seemed like the leader of the group had wavy red hair, tan skin, a lean body, and a cobra tattoo from his neck to his left ear. Leaving the arena, he went to the spellcasting class, which was conducted by Professor Neil. The spellcasting classroom had 3 rows of desks, all facing the teacher's table, behind which sat a large throne-like chair with a high back. 2 blackboards flanked the teacher's table, and behind them was a small shelf with books and other objects, beneath a pair of windows. The spell-casting classroom was smaller than the alchemy classroom but brighter in lighting and atmosphere. Students were happily chatting with their friends and looking forward to their first spellcasting class. Considering all the students had to take the spellcasting class, all the alchemy students were present in the class. When Michael entered the class, all their eyes fell on him. The alchemy house mostly consisted of humans and orcs as well as a few elves. The elves who were sorted into House of Alchemy were deemed inferior by the elves who got sorted into House Warriors or House Runemasters. Unlike the humans in the alchemy class, the orcs looked at him with a sense of respect. The orcs who sat on the last bench moved aside to make space for him. Edith noticed the change in the alchemy students' faces when Michael entered the classroom. Her train of thought was stopped as Professor Neil suddenly appeared in the middle of the class. Professor Neil was the polar opposite of gloomy Professor Lane. He was wearing a neatly pressed coat suit that was tailored for him by the best tailors in the Aquilon realm. He looked charming and lively, wearing a bright grin from ear to ear. Though he had a few strands of gray hair among his raven-black short hair, his vigor and liveliness blanketed his true age. Welcome to your first spellcasting class, dear students. Why so serious? Professor Neil's voice softened. Say good morning like there's no tomorrow. Good morning. The students cheered thunderously. His fusion stage level 8 cultivation earned him instant respect from the students. Professor Neil waved his hand as the blackboards flanking the teacher's table merged into one long board. All of you have cast spells in your life at least once. You're familiar with them, right? Professor Neil looked at the classroom as the students nodded their heads. You can understand the rest of this understanding on the L world. COM platform. So tell me, what is a spell? Edith quickly raised her hand. Yes, Miss 45. The whole class, including Michael, stared at Edith. A spell or an incantation, a charm, an enchantment or a bewitchery, is a magical formula intended to trigger a magical effect on a person or objects using energies found in the world. The spell can be spoken, sung, or chanted. Wonderful. Professor Neil bowed towards Edith as the whole class chuckled while Edith just bowed back embarrassedly. As Miss Talented 45 said, a spell can be spoken, sung, or chanted. But what about this? Professor Neil swirled his fingers as a mini cloud appeared above their heads. A streak of lightning flashed across the classroom and hit the table on which Edith was sitting behind. Edith almost jumped back in shock. A beautiful blue Ross emerged from the place where the lightning hit. Look at that, a pretty flower among gorgeous misses. Professor Neil winked at Edith and Victoria. Edith returned his wink with an awkward smile, but Victoria outright ignored him. Anyone with 2 eyes could see Professor Neil was extremely flirty. With his cultivation stage and handsomeness, it was obvious he had been with more ladies than bees in a hive. I didn't speak, sing, or chant, but still I cast a spell. It's a chantless spell. An elven girl raised her hand. New novel _chap_ are published here. L World. Sityong, another beauty with a knack for knocking down my questions. Professor Neil kissed his palm and blew it as rose petals materialized in the air and flew towards the elven girl. There are 2 kinds of spell casting. The ones we cast by speaking, chanting, or singing have no special name, it's just called spells. But the ones we cast without doing the above mentioned has a special name, chantless spells or chantless spell casting. Professor Neil wrote the word chantless spell casting on the board in stunning handwriting. But you might be tempted to say my fusion stage cultivation allowed me to cast chantless spells. That's not true. Any one of you could cast chantless spells if you are talented enough, which brings me to my next question. What did I mean by talent? He looked at the classroom for a few moments, but none answered. All of you are extremely talented. That's why you've been selected to enroll in Mazeroth. But what made you different from those who did not get into Mazeroth? The answer is your soul and Bodhi's ability to process the energies within you. That's what made you different from the others. That's what talent is. Your body and soul take in a higher amount of energy compared to the others. The more energy you take in, the faster you climb the higher stages of cultivation. Yet, one's soul remains a constant, but the body is the variable. In a few blinks of an eye, Professor Neil drew the anatomy of the human body perfectly on the board. The soul cannot be polluted, unlike the body. If you don't take care of your body, your ability to absorb energies from the world will be hindered. This is the reason why most of the cultivators avoid eating meats, drinking booze, and bed run-of-the-mill strumpets. Some of the male students chuckled, winking at some girls. The more talented you are, the higher the chances for you to cast chantless spells. Make no mistake, you can cast any spell without chanting if you mastered the chantless spell casting, except. Professor Neil paused as his voice turned into a whisper. He moved his hand to write 2 words on the board: elemental manipulation. Until recently, the concept of elemental manipulation was kept hidden from the outside world due to various safety reasons. I don't know what changed, but I was asked to give an introduction to elemental manipulation, though even I know only a little about it. Michael's interest in the class just got piqued by Neil's words. Every time he controlled the darkness, he wondered what kind of power it was. He hoped the system would give him an explanation, but the only explanation he received was how he should focus on upgrading the system to the next version. Elemental manipulation is just as the name suggests, the ability to control one of the 5 elements: water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, and light. Michael frowned as Professor Neil did not mention the element of darkness. Professor? Edith raised her hand. What about darkness? Isn't that also an element? Visit L World. COM for a better user experience. Michael appreciated the girl's question. He noticed an acute change in Neil's face. Darkness is not an element, Miss 45. Where there is no light, there is darkness. Darkness cannot exist without light, and unlike light, there is no source for darkness. In simple words, darkness is just the void of light. Michael wasn't very convinced by his explanation. It sounded like Professor Neil was reciting the answer he got from someone else. However, it was neither his place nor the time to prove that darkness is indeed an explanation and he was the source of it. The scholars in Sky Hall believe that when you learn and focus on spells of a particular element, for example, fire spells, the key word is might. You might grasp the concept of elemental manipulation. However, it's just a theory and it will remain as one until we find someone who could manipulate an element. Michael was sure that Noah would be able to manipulate light, and something told him that the girl who killed the mountain troll might be able to manipulate an element, namely water. Now let's move on to the categorization of spells. Who can tell me how we can categorize the spells? Yet again Edith raised her hand. Yes, Miss 45, common, uncommon, rare, epic and legendary. Right again. Miss 45, are you gunning for my job? Neil laughed, making Edith blush. Now most of you might think that legendary spells are the top dogs. But it's not always true. Let me give you an example. Think of a perfectly healthy baby and a weak old man. No matter how hard the baby tries, the baby won't win a battle against the old man even though he's weak. What's the connection, you ask? Neil asked the class. In this scenario, the baby is a starting stage cultivator with a legendary spell and the weak old man is a later stage cultivator with a common spell. The power of the spell depends on the cultivator and the cultivation stage. Many rich people go crazy for legendary spells and pay millions, but they don't understand that they should invest that money to climb the higher stages of cultivation. Without a strong cultivation base, even if you have several legendary spells in your arsenal, a cultivator with a strong base could defeat you with a simple common spell. By strong cultivation, I meant you must be at least at the soul refining stage to unleash the full potential of a legendary spell. Full_current_novel on L-World. When Professor Neil then went on and on explaining each category of the spells to a great extent. Michael almost felt sleepy. After 40 minutes, except for Edith and a few girls, almost the entire class was droopy. With this, we will wind up our class. In the next class, I'd try not to make you all sleepy. Now run along before Professor Steinmeier starts to look for you. Trust me, that won't end well, Professor Neil chuckled before waving his hand. The next moment, he disappeared from the classroom. Michael had a feeling that Neil got a taste of Gaia's attitude. He was the first to leave the class, and on his way to the combat class, he contacted Gaia to do him a favor. Chapter 450 Bullying the Bullies. The combat class was changed from the combat classroom to the arena where Nightmare was bullied an hour ago. The students made their way to the arena in groups or couples. Only Michael walked alone until Eladir joined him. Do you have any idea why we are having the class in the arena? Eladir asked, though he seemed to have guessed Lucifer had something to do with this. You will see. While they were on their way to the arena, the students looked up at the sky to see flocks of various magical beasts descending towards them. Not all the magical beasts were able to fly, as there were several magical beasts running towards them too. One of the familiars among the familiars in the sky was Nightmare. Due to Wilcast's poor status, he did not have a familiar. Only a few students lacked families when they reached Mazeroth. Even among countless students, Nightmare located Michael and landed on his shoulder. How was your training, Nightmare? Asked Michael, pretending he didn't see Nightmare earlier. He kept his face straight. Anything special happen, Nightmare? He asked Nightmare. Even Eladir, who was several thousand years old, did not notice the cold intent in his eyes. No, Nightmare lied. For a moment Michael felt extremely annoyed and aggravated by the lie, but when he saw the eyes of Nightmare, he calmed down. He understood why the dragon was lying to him. Nightmare would rather face his own problems than adding them on top of Michael's. Gaia was standing in the center of the arena, sharpening the long sword in her hand. She and Nightmare bickered and fought almost every day, but both of them loved the other dearly. Hence, when Gaia heard about Nightmare being bullied by a bunch of humans, she was royally pissed. If it wasn't for Michael who convinced her to stay put, she would have kicked the life out of the bullies in the name of punishment. Line up! Her shout sent chills through their spines. They quickly formed a line. Gaia flicked her wrist as a stack of silver coins materialized beside her. With another flick of her wrist, she sent a coin towards a student and their familiar. The students gawked at the floating coins in front of them with bewildered faces. What the fuck are you looking at? Take them. The students and the familiars grabbed the coins. At the end of this class, whoever has the most coins will get this. A silver parchment appeared in her hand. A rare level spell. She threw the parchment on the ground. New novel _chap_ are published here. L-World. Come, that's it? A cocky human student from House Warriors snickered. You can rob, attack, do whatever you want. And House Warriors, she looked at the students who were in Warrior House robes. If you get your asses kicked, don't even bother coming back. Now shoo, she gestured at them to go away, but not before taking a long look at where Michael was looking at the bullies. The students immediately scattered in all directions. Most of them chose the Black Forest as their destination. The Black Forest would provide them with much-needed cover for them to safeguard their coins. Many who were not warriors knew they would be decimated if they went against the warriors or runemasters. Hence, hiding was their only choice. Victoria dashed in the direction of the Black Forest. She wasn't running but chasing her prey. I thought you don't care about stuff like this, Edith asked while running behind Victoria. I don't, but I'm not gonna be bested by a bunch of clowns either, she said, targeting a dwarf who was running as though his life was depending on the coin. Boom. The dwarf was extremely unlucky as he was targeted by Victoria. Like a cheetah that pounces on its prey, Victoria leaped at the dwarf. The dwarf barely looked up when he felt a sharp pain on the back of his head. Victoria took the coin off of the dwarf she just knocked down. On her way to the Black Forest, she collected several more coins. Edith might not be fighting like Victoria while running, but once she reached the Black Forest, she was confident that she could trap the students with her runic traps and collect more coins. A forest like the Black Forest was a natural playground for a runemaster like her. She was a 4-star runemaster, and according to her big sister, Layla Alden, she was just a few years training away from reaching a 5-star level. It took the duo 15 minutes to reach the border of the Black Forest. They entered the woods cautiously. Edith touched the trees as she followed behind Victoria. Every time she placed her hand on a tree, a palm-sized chakra appeared on them and disappeared into the tree. Shoo! Suddenly Victoria stopped on her path. There's someone ahead and he was getting surrounded by 5. Victoria sent waves of cosmic energy to scan her surroundings. She cautiously moved in the direction of the 6 students. With a swift leap, she landed on a nearby tree branch to get a good view of the scene. Edith bent her hips, drawing a symbol on the ground beneath her feet. Then when she jumped, the symbol glowed, boosting her leap. When she landed beside her friend Victoria, she saw a familiar face standing in the middle of the forest. A crimson-scaled forest dragon was resting atop his shoulder. That's our train neighbor, _current_novel on L-World. See him? My, what do we have here? All of a sudden, a cocky voice reverberated in the forest. Edith and Victoria turned their gazes away from the alchemist to see 5 students of House Warriors step out of the shadows one by one. They flanked him in all directions. Hey, look at that! It's our toy! The red wavy-haired youngster pointed the stick in his hand at Nightmare. An alchemist? This is pathetic. Edith saw a pale-skinned girl lick the tip of her blade. I think we should let the dragon see its master getting the end of our boots, another youngster coldly said. How low can they stoop? Seeing 5 warriors surrounding an alchemist put a frown on Edith's face. In going to help him, Edith took a step forward only to be stopped by Victoria. That's not our business. If he can't save himself, he should have been at least good at hiding. I can't stay here doing nothing when someone's being bullied in front of my eyes. Edith's whisper turned colder. As expected, just as she was about to jump down, they heard the alchemist calmly speak. Nightmare, who was resting atop Michael's shoulder, began to shiver. He was struck by nervousness. When they began to bully him, he could have simply told either Gaia or Michael and they would have dealt with them. But he restrained himself from doing that to avoid causing them an extra problem, as Nightmare knew they were dealing with enough problems as it is. However, sensing the cold intent in Michael's voice, Nightmare realized that he might know everything. Bullies stick together, huh? Michael cracked his knuckles one by one. If there is a forest, Edith heard him and was surprised by his calmness despite the tricky situation he was in. Lion, tiger, dragon will prowl to hunt for their prey. The prey will run for its life. Victoria looked him in the eyes and saw no fear, not at all. But if the sun sets and darkness descended by then, the animal which will survive to watch a new dawn would be decided only by the nature. He rolled up his sleeves gradually as he spoke. But in this jungle, when the darkness falls, when, where, and who will watch the daybreak won't be decided by nature. Finally, Michael cracked his neck. This time, the murderous intent in his eyes was visible to everyone, including Edith. The aura he radiated rendered the warriors speechless. "It's me." Victoria was surprised at the speed of his dash toward the red-haired youngster. The warrior barely had time to move a muscle when he received a punch that sent him flying onto the tree behind him. For more _novel, visit L-World. See, the rest of the warriors were stupefied by his speed. Before they could react, Michael had once again dashed at the red-haired student. He was growling on the ground. Suddenly his growl turned into a scream of agony because Michael mercilessly stomped on the bully's kneecap, shattering it into pieces. While the youngster was screaming, crying, and growling beneath his feet, Michael turned back. The other four warriors were dashing at him put a sudden break when they saw his cold gaze landing on them. An unexplainable fear clutched their hearts. They were warriors and they shouldn't have felt afraid in front of an alchemist, but they did feel afraid. He made only a few moves, but they were enough to reveal his battle prowess to Victoria. He didn't seem like a normal alchemist to her. For the first time in her life, she slightly felt curious about a guy. Arg. The red-haired youngster screamed yet again as this time, Michael stomped on his other kneecap. Although the student could be healed with a healing potion, the pain he was feeling right now would be ingrained into his brain forever. If he felt an urge to bully again, this pain would kill that urge. "What have you done?" "You." The girl stood closer to Michael, shivering. Their leader was just crushed in a few mere moments. If they could use spells, they would fight fearlessly. Since that was not the case, they all started to tremble and the red-haired youngster's cries didn't give them any courage. Regardless of her gender, Michael picked her as his next target. Plop. Edith closed her eyes the very next second after he slapped the girl with enough force to create a mini shock wave. Unlike the red-haired youngster, she immediately lost consciousness as well as a few teeth. Nightmare supposed that he should feel pity for them, but he felt nothing for these bullies. Michael tilted his head, grinning at the three remaining students. "I thought bullying the weak got you off." Victoria was looking at the alchemist beating the crap out of the three warriors with mild interest. The trio ganged up on him, still they could not even lay a finger on him. Each of his moves was precise, deadly, and straightforward. Except for the girl, he broke several bones of the others. The girl forced open her eyes gradually at the wrong possible time. "Arms or legs? You can only pick two, bitch." Nightmare wanted to stop, but looking at the murderous look in his eyes, he knew it was too late to stop him. _new_scorda on the L-World. COM platform. He was just a few meters away from the girl when Edith landed right between the girl and Michael. "It's enough." Edith stomped the ground. Chapter 451. Gaia is fired. Just like Victoria scanned her surroundings, Michael also performed the scanning. The only difference other than the obvious energy difference was Michael sensed the two girls' presence way before Victoria sensed him. He let them see the one-sided brutality to earn badass points. As he expected, he earned quite a lot of badass points. Since every single one in Mazeroth was either genius or celebrity, his badassery earned tons of badass points. Because of this theory, he didn't think deeply about the two girls' identities. Miss 45. Michael lowered his sleeves down. "Something tells me you are not here for my coin." Edith was stunned by the sudden change in his demeanor. A few moments ago, he was coldly breaking the bones of his fellow students, and now, he was smiling warmly. I was foolish to think you needed help. How could you do this? Edith's eyes watered looking around. Their cries and agony softened her already soft heart. Thank you for your kindness, Miss 45. Now if you step aside, I have a bitch to deal with. Michael looked at Nightmare standing atop his shoulder and saw his worried face when he was being bullied. That scene kindled the rage in his heart. If he was outside, he would have killed the 5 by now. The least he could do was break a few bones, and that was letting them off easily. No, Edith stomped the ground again. This time, the ground beneath him trembled as translucent chakras appeared behind her. But the chakras quickly disappeared as soon as they appeared. Human, we have a problem. To his surprise, he heard Gaia's voice in his head. You can't take their coins, but I won't let you harm them any more than you have already. Edith's voice turned colder. I couldn't care less about these coins. Michael took the 2 coins from his pocket before throwing them at Edith's feet. It was him who asked Gaia to assign them this task so he could follow these bullies and teach them a lesson. He had no interest in winning. For their medical expenses, with a snicker, he turned his back on Edith. Before leaving the scene, he looked up at the tree Victoria was standing on. Victoria felt his gaze on her for a second. She was sure that he looked directly at her. She was hiding her presence as well as her body, yet he sensed her through all the foliage, darkness, and the trees. She was surprised by him. This content is taken from L-World. Quickly, Nightmare jumped down from his shoulder while transforming into his real form. With Michael on his back, Nightmare took off into the sky with a powerful flap of his wings like a bullet from a gun. The arena was just a few minutes flying away from the Black Forest. With Nightmare's speed, they reached it in 2 minutes. As he landed in the arena, he saw several students, as well as a silver horse with 2 feathery wings, protruding out of its back, slacking on the ground. A youngster who looked like the embodiment of the word warrior was talking to Gaia, and by the redness and the stiffness of Gaia's body, it seemed like they were having a heated conversation. To be more precise, Gaia seemed to be having a heated conversation while the youngster looked calm and composed. Elliot Watson, Michael recognized the youngster as the head prefect. When he first came to Mazorth Castle, he met the head prefect along with 3 other students. He wondered why he was here and what he did to make Gaia's face become as red as a ripe tomato. Soon he noticed a golden parchment in her hand. 2 classes, and you've put the student's life at risk in each class. I heard you the first several times. What made you fucking qualified to tell me how to do my fucking job? Michael joined the group of students staring at the ruckus to hear her shout. She noticed Michael but didn't acknowledge him due to obvious reasons. I'm qualified and have the authority to take back your job. Michael was stunned. You have endangered the lives of the students enough, and the way you've been treating them is not the way a house warrior teacher should. You have a week to vacate the premises. Good day, Miss Nayla Steinmeier. Elliot adjusted his spectacles before jumping back on his horse and flying away. What's happening? Eladir came to his side with a grin. In his hand, he had a pouch, and by the clicking sounds coming from the pouch, Michael could see they were coins. Class dismissed as well as the professor. Few elves chuckled among the group. Not only the elves but also the students of other races too looked happy and wore bright smiles on their faces. The alchemists were the ones who seemed most relieved. Ex-professor, the elves continued to laugh among themselves. Gaia left the arena before she lost her patience and broke the faces of those who were laughing. Try the L-World. COM platform_ for the most advanced reading experience. Back in Michael's room, a 7-foot mirror had erupted. In front of the mirror stood Eladir, Michael, and Nightmare. So these spiders capture the feed in real time and project it through mirrors? Eladir was curiously staring at the spider on his palm. I can enhance them by increasing their speed, durability, and prevent them from getting detected by some of the powerful arrays. Although they were made of junk metal, there are some arrays that could still detect their presence. Is this thing working? Gaia appeared in the mirror while Eladir was fiddling with the spider. She was poking the spider, and seeing her face up close put a smile on Michael's face. It was funny. She was currently standing in a cozy room with a fireplace and comfy sofa. There were several portraits of the founders of Mazorth hanging on the wall behind her. The room, however, was a mess, and he noticed the broken table lying in pieces. "Yes, I can see you. Now if you step back, you will be able to see us too," Michael talked to the spider floating in the air in front of him. Since meeting Gaia in person would raise unwanted suspicions, he used the spiders as web cameras and initiated a video call using the devices he built. "Tell me what happened?" asked Michael. "Didn't you see? I was fired. That son of a bitch evoked some idiotic rule to fire me out of my job. We are less than 16 away from starting the ritual and I have already lost my job. What are we gonna do about it?" I do vaguely remember something about in the event of a professor abusing his or her power to endanger the lives of their students, a secret vote can be held by the head prefect, and if the vote passed against the professor, they will be stripped of their job. But to evoke the rule, take the vote and fire you from your post within 2 days is quite a feat, Dark Queen. Gaia rolled her eyes seeing Eladir praising Elliot. "We will proceed as we planned. It's too late to back off now. After we make my soul whole again, we may not even have to be here. Eladir, you sure you can modify the teleportation scroll to teleport us out of here?" "Already finished it. Just say the word and the 4 of us will be out of here before one could say cheese." Michael wanted to say he was surprised, but he expected this from a 6-star runemaster who was several thousand years old. He had the knowledge and skills to open the gates to Earth, and for a runemaster with his caliber, it would be simple enough to modify a teleportation scroll. "The girl, will she be there?" "Our whole plan depends on her showing up to battle the fire giant," Gaia asked. She didn't give a damn about being a professor. The only thing she cared about was the ritual that was supposed to happen tomorrow. No matter what happens, they have to go through with the ritual. The sooner his soul becomes whole, the better. Gaia knew this. The ritual was extremely important, and that was why she was royally pissed at Elliot for getting herself fired. _new_episode_ on the L World COM platform. "Don't worry. She will come." After discussing their plan for a few more minutes, Michael cut the call. He then took out a muddy brown potion from the system storage. "Nightmare," he called Nightmare as the little dragon came flying to him. "Take this." He handed over the potion to Nightmare. "It's your task to spray this potion in the air and lure the fire giant to the ritual site." They picked up a secluded site in the middle of the Black Forest as their ritual site. It was far from the Mazeroth castle, yet relatively closer to the fire giant. According to Eladir, the ritual might last from 1 hour to 3 hours. The first step of the ritual was to extract the soul piece that Michael named as the third persona. The second step was to cage the soul into the fire giant's body, thus giving the soul piece a physical manifestation. Then the third and most difficult step of the ritual was letting Rowena defeat the fire giant but not kill it. She had to weaken the giant so Michael could absorb the soul back at its weakest state. In its weakest state, it would be merged with the other 2 soul pieces, and if everything went according to their plan, his soul would be whole once again. As they were finalizing their plan for tomorrow, Gaia's doors were knocked on by an unexpected guest. Gaia was irritated by the fact she got fired, and moreover, the guy who was responsible for it was stronger than her. It was embarrassing for her. After diligent cultivation, she just reached core strengthening stage level 4. However, Elliot was at soul refining stage level 2. "Only if I went through my metamorphosis." Damn it. Her train of thought was interrupted by a knock on her door. She cast a quick spell to spread her senses. When she sensed the one who was knocking on her door, she was surprised. It was an extremely powerful presence, a presence of a fusion stage cultivator. New novel _chap_s are published here, L World. She was surprised and startled more than she was annoyed. With utter caution, she slowly approached the door. When she opened the door, a man clothed in dark robes resembling an overgrown bat stood at her doorstep. "Professor Lane?" Chapter 452. The ritual has begun. Professor Lane entered Gaia's room without bothering to ask her permission. He gawked at the mess in the room but didn't seem like he gave a damn. "Yeah, come in." Gaia rolled her eyes. "How do you like your job back, Miss Steinmeier?" Professor Lane asked in his waspish voice. "Huh? Gaia was confused. I have a task for someone with your caliber, Miss Steinmeier. Accomplish this and you will be Professor Steinmeier. Before Gaia could say anything, she had a feeling that she should hear him more. After all, she needed to pretend as she cares about this job to avoid raising suspicions. She was really lucky whatever spell was cast on her when she took the identification card of the real imposter of Professor Steinmeier was powerful enough to fool even the fusion stage cultivator such as Lane. Otherwise, she would have probably ended up in the deepest dungeons of Mazeroth. I have a week to get out of here, Professor Lane. So whatever's in your mind, Dash. If you depart now, you can finish it before tomorrow night. He stared at Gaia wordlessly asking for her answer. What's the job? Gaia asked, sighing. Escorting a student in and out of a dungeon. A dungeon? Gaia's curiosity was slightly piqued because dungeons are rare, but every dungeon would contain a priceless artifact or a relic worth risking their lives. If a dungeon was found, it would cause a ruckus among cultivators. Soon, the dungeon would be filled with adventurers, rogue cultivators, sects to loot everything inside. Anything that could be found in a dungeon would be extremely valuable. However, as much as the dungeons contained valuables, they also contained danger in every corner. If 100 people entered the dungeon, only a few would come outside fully intact. The task seems extremely dangerous, Professor Lane, especially for the student. If you tell me more about the dungeon and what it contains, I might take the task. After all, I want all the information I need before risking my life. Being alive is more important than being a professor. Fair enough, Professor Lane nodded. He almost looked like he was expecting everything Gaia just said. For more _novel, visit Elworld. Calm, primordial fire. A single word that came from Lane's mouth was enough to make her shudder. The last time she witnessed the power of a primordial four was when she was in the fire realm. Noah used Heaven's flame to save the old man from House Fisher. The flame was powerful enough to obliterate even the extremely powerful poison miasma in the fire realm. According to the text she read in the Nagaland library, the primordial flames would grow stronger with time and enhance the spells and skills one possessed. She also heard from Michael that he needs a primordial flame to reach the 6-star alchemist. That's what's inside the dungeon along with skeleton soldiers. Wait a minute. If that's what's all in the dungeon, why didn't anyone get it? So what's the catch? Gaia was not dumb enough to believe that there was primordial fire sitting in a dungeon, but no one in the Aquilon realm had taken steps to get the fire for themselves. The dungeon is protected by a void array. Even a half-immortal would be rendered powerless the moment he or she steps into the dungeon. Which means only a battle-hardened warrior can get in and out alive. Something tells me countless battle-hardened warriors had already tried that and didn't live to tell the tale. Gaia emphasized the word battle-hardened, crossing her arms. Lane was annoyed by all the questions, but he never showed his emotions on his face. After all, he needed her to do his bidding. With a flick of his wrist, Lane conjured a purple flame above his palm. Unlike the normal flames, primordial flames have a mind of their own. If the primordial flames deemed you unworthy when you try to absorb them, you will be reduced to nothing but ashes. He threw the purple fire onto the broken table behind him. In mere moments, the oak table turned into ashes as he said. Gaia was surprised by his theatrics as he had no need to turn the table into ashes. I assume you want to know who is the student you have to accompany. Gaia nodded in curiosity. She derived a bunch of plans to get rid of the student and sneak Michael into the dungeon instead. The student has the ID 66. Weirdly, he chose to go by the name Ghost, and where he came from. Gaia received yet another shock from Professor Lane. He is an alchemy student, probably a prodigy. He may have a chance to absorb the primordial flame without being obliterated by it. She sensed no remorse or nothing at all in his voice. What if he was deemed not unworthy by the flames, which she didn't believe would be the case? If anyone was worthy of the primordial flames, it was him. I can get him in, and if he survived the flames, I can get him outside. New novel _Skype_ are published here. Elworld. Come great. Use this when you are within 3 feet of him. You will be teleported directly into the dungeon's entryway. He will have no choice but to see it till the end. He talked while walking towards the door to leave the room. just before stepping out of the room, he handed over a golden teleportation scroll to Gaia. He did not even bother to ask if she was going to agree or not, as he knew she had no choice. What if that head prefect asshole tried to get me fired again? Next time, not every professor will sign the petition. By the time his voice reached her ears, he already vanished into thin air. Then she realized that if what he said was true, all the professors signed the petition, including him. This meant he manipulated the entire scenario just to get her to agree to the task. She even doubted he may have been the person who initiated the plan to get her fired in the first place. However, instead of punching something to vent her anger, she burst into laughter. Haha, well, Professor Lane may have felt like the mastermind, but only she knew who was the real winner in the situation, Michael. Lady Luck was on his side, that Gaia knew for sure. The only thing that bugged her was in less than a day, they had the ritual to put his soul back together. Although they were talking about the ritual and how to perform it, they had no idea how it was going to go. To be honest, she was worried sick, but she didn't let Michael see her anxiety. In the Serenade of the Black, the stars were a choir. They were lights that sing in infinite patterns. Sometimes eyes needed music, and the darker the night, the sweeter the song. Amid the starlight was the ever-glow of the moon, that mother of the sky who watched over every beating heart, steady and true. Despite her angelic moonlight that bathed the planet with sapphire light, the black forest remained dark. The thousands of years-old trees shaded the ground with their ever-expanding canopy, preventing any light from cutting through them. Nothing was audible except for the sound of snoring in the distance. In the middle of a large glowing chakra stood Michael, Gaia, and Aladir. "The fire giant is still sleeping, I guess," said Aladir. "When should we do this?" Nightmare flew back to Michael after surveying the surroundings. "I just need your blood." Michael walked towards Aladir and took out a dagger from the system storage. The next moment, he cut open his palm as blood gushed out, dripping onto the glowing chakra. When the blood touched the chakra, the glowing blue chakra turned crimson red. "Step to the center and the ritual will begin." Aladir's voice turned serious. The usual calmness in his voice was nowhere to be found. Gaia was slightly shaking seeing Michael taking steps towards the center of the chakra. "Nightmare now. Lure the fire giant here," Aladir ordered Nightmare. The dragon quickly nodded his head before flying in the direction of the fire giant as fast as he could. _out current_novel on L-World. Seeing Gaia threw the bait potion into the air, which was caught by Nightmare in midair. Boom. When he flapped his wing, it produced a quiet booming sound. She had never seen Nightmare fly so fast. Everyone was nervous, including Aladir, despite his calm demeanor. "Please come back to me in one piece, human," she whispered to him. She prayed to her mother with her hands against the chest. Regardless of the situation, when he warmly smiled at her, she calmed down. Ja! All of a sudden a thunderous roar echoed through the forest, almost breaking their eardrums. The shout was soon followed by thunderous footsteps. The ground beneath them shook. Manual soul extraction is initiated. Arch energy flow has been stopped. Prepare to go through an extreme amount of pain. System offline in 3, 2, 1. Aish! Michael's outcry in pain sent a chill through Gaia's spine. She dashed towards him in instinct to save him, only to be stopped by Aladir. The ritual must not stop. Aladir and Gaia saw the blood gushing out of Michael's nostrils and mouth as he collapsed onto his knees. He howled at the sky like a wolf in pain. His soul was literally being stripped out of him. The pain he suffered could not be described in mere words. Everything in his being hurt. His head hurt, his chest hurt, his feet hurt, and every single fiber in his body screamed in agony. The pain subsided at times, only to flare up several times more intense than before. He held his head tightly, trying to fight through the pain. It was difficult to focus between the moments of pain and the voices telling him to stop what he was doing, but he pressed onward. But he felt sore all over. The ritual was taking its toll on his entire body more than he initially expected. However, his anger and pain in his heart offered him the strength to bear the pain. His mind and body told him to give up, but the anger of being abandoned and caged for something he never even did fueled his willpower to get through the ritual. Gaia's worried look took a turn to worse when she witnessed a smoky figure emerge from Michael. It was appearing and disappearing from his body as though it didn't want to leave his body. The most up-to-date NOV_Ls are published here, L-World. Seeking the figure was screaming, but she never heard the screams. The broken piece of the soul, Eladir explained in utter shock. As a scholar specializing in souls, this was the first time he had seen such a phenomenon. Witnessing the power being radiated by the soul piece truly frightened him. Chapter 453. The possessed fire giant. Even when his pain was killing him from within, Michael's brain still functioned, telling him not to scream no matter what. If he were to scream before the fire giant reached the ritual ground, it would prematurely attract the girl or worse, a professor. The fire giant's scream sounded closer and closer. He could feel the ground beneath him tremble violently. How long does he have to go through this? He could vaguely hear Gaia's outcry, "Run!" Nightmare shouts sounded in his mind. With great difficulty, he looked up. His vision was not as clear as it used to be a few moments ago. The X-ray vision, the arch energy, and the strength he possessed were nowhere to be found. It made sense as the system informed him that his arch energy flow had been interrupted. He was in a most vulnerable position. If anyone chose to attack him, he would be defenseless. Even a foundation-stage cultivator with a dagger could end his life, let alone a fire giant of soul refining stage level 8. The girl who slew the mountain troll was at fusion stage level 2. If his guess was correct, the fire giant would reach the fusion stage after merging with the third piece of the soul. He felt a scorching hot smoke brush past him. The splitters came flying from the broken trees, causing several cuts on his face. His blood slowly painted his face red. What stood before him was a fire giant standing over 5 meters tall. It was a thick-limbed humanoid with deep crimson-red skin. Its eyes were sunken into their sockets, glimmering in golden yellow. The giant's hair resembled fire, disorderly with streaks of orange and yellow, whereas its claws and teeth resembled fire-blackened steel. Despite their physical form, fire giants possessed the intellect of a human. Hence, when it saw glowing crimson-red chakra, the giant realized that it stepped into a trap. However, instead of backing off, it charged forth, targeting Michael. "Now release!" Eladir shouted the moment the giant stepped into the chakra. The shout was directed at Michael, and he knew it. "Argt!" His scream was ear-piercing. The sound-absorbing array Eladir absorbed the scream and prevented anyone from the castle from hearing it. The human part of his scream quickly turned demonic. "Knew it!" A demonic voice shouted within him. It rendered everyone, including the fire giant, stunned. Powerful sound waves shot out of Michael and pushed everyone around him several steps backward. Eladir was dazed by the power. Something little such as a shout contained enough force to crush a body-refining stage cultivator. He could not even fathom the power he would possess after reaching his full potential. Steady herself, she saw an ethereal figure resembling Michael's Lucifer form arising from within. This _content is taken from L-World. "Seek, get." Michael grabbed his head as blood started to seep through his eyes. For the first time, he saw the third persona manifest. A ghostly chain was still connecting the both of them. Michael grabbed the chain as his lips curved upwards. He crushed the chain, finally releasing the third persona out. "No." Michael vaguely heard another shout from Eladir. But this time, it was directed towards Gaia. The longbow and arrow materialized in her hand, and both of them glowed brighter and brighter, radiating immense power. A web of tiny symbols could be seen on her bow and the arrow. The runes Eladir placed on the arrow would boost the arrow's power. Although the arrow wouldn't be able to kill the fire giant, the arrow would temporarily weaken it. In the weak state, the third piece of the soul would be sent into the fire giant's body relatively easily. Otherwise, the fire giant's body would explode due to the power of the soul. "You imbecile!" Gaia saw the ethereal figure scream at Michael, trying to reach him, whereas the glowing chakra began to rotate faster and faster. Boom! The arrow fired from Gaia's bow broke the sound barrier. In a blink of an eye, the arrow went straight through the fire giant's chest. Jara! The fire giant's shout sounded quieter than they expected. From the wound caused by the arrow, a bubble of blood dropped onto the chakra. The next moment, a powerful gust of wind knocked down all the trees in the 5-meter radius. It didn't stop with a gust of wind, but the rotating chakra created a mini typhoon. Every tree, splinters, log, and object in the vicinity got pulled into the typhoon. Nightmare felt the pull, but he managed to fly to Gaia using all of his strength. Gaia, on the other hand, held onto a tree with all her might. Elidor managed to stand still without being pulled by the typhoon using a rune. Nu! The third persona screamed again. Little by little, it got pulled towards the fire giant. Michael's vision gradually blurred until he saw nothing but darkness. Try the L world. Com platform _4 the most advanced reading experience. Human. Gaia shouted when she saw Michael collapse onto the ground. On the other hand, the fire demon's golden eyes turned pitch black. Away! Elidor raised his hand at the fire giant. A golden chakra shot out of Elidor's hand and flew towards the fire giant. When the fire giant and the golden chakra clashed, a bright beam of golden light exploded. Their eyes were made to close by the brightness. When they opened their eyes, the fire giant along with the crimson-red chakra on the ground and the typhoon disappeared. Gaia finally fell to the ground. The moment she hit the ground, she rushed towards Michael. She slid through the mud and splinters to reach him. She picked up his head and put it on her lap. Nightmare landed beside him with his 2 eyes welled up with tears. He's not breathing. Gaia shook his body. Ghosty, Nightmare scratched his arms with his mouth. Now it all depends on the girl, Elidor sighed, looking at the distant horizon. Somewhere else in the Ukulun realm, a giant palace was floating above the clouds. The palace was basking in the light of the full moon. This was the residency of the Holy Maiden, the Ice Palace. As the name indicates, the palace was made of nothing but pure ice. Only the Holy Maiden could inhabit such a harsh environment. In the center of the palace, where the snowy mist was covering as far as an eye could see, Rowena was meditating. Her eyes opened abruptly as they twinkled like sapphires. "Fire giant," she mumbled. In a few moments, another figure came running to Rowena. "Holy Maiden, a fire giant has appeared in the Black Forest," Bai Ning exclaimed. Rowena already stood up, the icy swords attached to chains materialized in her hands. There was no door in the palace. She just walked towards a wall, but the wall split open as she approached. "Holy Maiden, we need a plan of attack." Bai Ning tried to stop Rowena from blindly rushing into a battle. At first, when Bai Ning sensed the fire giant, its power was over the roof. The fire giant was unusually powerful, and that was what made Bai Ning worried. "I have a plan. Attack!" Rowena shot out through the hole, breaking the sound barrier. Visit to L World. Com discover _new novels. Her figure disappeared into the clouds while Bai Ning followed her behind. The old woman could barely keep up with the Holy Maiden. Order Mazeroth to stay away from the fire giant. It was the last thing Bai Ning heard before Rowena's figure completely disappeared from her sight. Rowena was flying like a bullet towards the Black Forest. She spread her senses to locate the fire giant, and it only took a second to pinpoint its location. The fire giant was wreaking havoc in the Black Forest. It was destroying every tree and everything in its path. Rowena increased her speed. She had sensed the unusual power radiating from the fire giant, yet it didn't stop her. The arch energy radiated from the fire giant was fluctuating. One time, it was at fusion stage level 2, and another time, it was at soul refining stage level 10. She was slightly stunned in midair when the fire giant directed its gaze at her and talked like a human. The fire giant, now possessed by Michael's broken piece of the soul, threw its fist at Rowena. Covering her fist with chilling ice, she met the fire giant's fist with her fist. Boom! The moment their fists collided, it produced a powerful shockwave that decimated everything in a 20-meter radius. The ancient trees exploded into million pieces. Rowena landed on the ground comfortably while the fire giant stumped back several steps. Rowena cracked her knuckles. The fire growled angrily before steadying itself. There was at least 10 meters distance between them. For a few seconds, neither of them made a single move as they just stared at each other. Regardless of her puny form, the fire giant did not dare to underestimate her. After all, the sole piece posing the fire giant was part of Michael and inherited his intellect. Therefore, instead of rushing into the battle like Big Dumb, it looked around, planning in its mind. In Rowena's mind, she had gone through hundreds of scenarios of their battle. Although she won the battle in many of the scenarios, she still didn't underestimate the fire giant because of two reasons. First, she had no clear idea about the fire giant's abilities. Of course, she studied about the fire giant, but something told her that this fire giant was different from the ones she read about. The second reason, the energy being radiated from the fire giant wasn't purely arch-energy, it was something much more powerful. Try the L-World. Com platform _4 the most advanced reading experience. After several moments of staring at each other, they finally started to run toward each other. From the distance, Victoria and Edith were looking at the fire giant along with all the other students. Every single one was woken up by the sound and came to the balcony to witness the battle. Unfortunately, they could only see the head of the fire giant but not Rowena due to the physical forms. "Let's dance!" With a battle cry, Rowena jumped into the air raising her fist. Chapter 454 The cold flames. A trail of icy mist could be seen appearing around Rowena. On the opposite, the fire giant left a trail of blazing fire. It was not only the fight between Rowena and the fire giant but also the battle of ice and fire. The frost blades disappeared from her hand as she threw her fist to meet the fire giant's fist. Boom! The shockwave shot out from the collision of their fist, destroyed everything around them. The fire giant was pushed back several feet, but Rowena remained still. She cracked her knuckles and then her neck, just like Michael. "Something is controlling the fire giant," Rowena mumbled. The oversize of the fire giant put the third persona at a disadvantage. To harm Rowena, it needed to land a hit on her, but before the giant could raise his fist, she could hit the giant several times. Therefore, the third persona changed the battle tactic. Just like before, the fire giant moved toward Rowena, seeming not to have any battle plan. Rowena remained still, waiting for the fire giant to punch her. However, when she was waiting for the fist, a beam of light shot out of its eye. Rowena was caught off guard by the sudden beam of fire. It was so quick, lightning quick. Many students watching the giant from the castle didn't even see the beam of fire. They only witnessed a sudden flash of light. The fire giant stared at the cloud of smoke and the crater created by the beam of fire. The scorching hot beam turned everything into ashes. Gradually, the mist cleared. The fire giant was stunned as it could see Rowena's figure in the mist. The blue robes she wore were burnt to a crisp by the flame despite the protection runes placed on them. This time, pure frosty ice materialized on her body, forming an armor. The prophecy, standing in her office, Kayla was witnessing the fight through the window. "We have entered the age of darkness," she recalled the words Wulfric spoke a couple of months ago. Headmistress Gilrine entered the room. "I placed the talismans you gave me around the forest," Kayla sighed. "Make sure no one ventures into the Black Forest. From now on, the Black Forest is forbidden for everyone including the staff," she said without moving her eyes from the fire giant. "Visit L-World. See for a better understanding experience." Headmistress Gilrine had a bewildered look on his face. He scratched the back of his head. "You can spit out what's in your mind, Gilrine. Why aren't we deploying our forces to Black Forest, Headmistress? Our forces can subdue the fire giant without destroying the forest. The forces in play are beyond the mortals, Gilrine. Our forces are nothing before them." Gilrine nodded without uttering any word. He trusted the headmaster and headmistress with his life. Whatever decision they made, he knew it would be the best. Frost storm. On the battlefield, Rowena raised her hand, casting a chantless spell. The black forest became darker as the storm clouds blanketed the moon and her dazzling light. The students gasped in shock. Storm was an understatement. The howling wind and the size of the tornado arose, connecting the ground and the sky, frightened every single one. Even Victoria was stunned by the sight of the storm in the black forest. The tornado swirled towards the fire giant. Oh. The fire giant breathed fire into the icy tornado. The dance between ice and fire created a phenomenon no one had ever seen. Keala, who knew the storm was created by the Holy Maiden, felt a chill. She knew this spell could destroy an entire city within a few minutes. Even a spell like that caliber couldn't kill the fire giant. Rowena shot into the tornado, and the moment she reached the tornado swirled faster and faster, and the power of the first storm multiplied by several folds. She pushed away the fire coming from the giant's mouth. Little by little, the frost storm moved towards the fire giant through the stream of fire. Arctic arrows! She shouted in her mind as hundreds of 6-foot arrows shot out from the tornado like bullets. The fire giant raised its hand to defend its eyes from the arrows. Step by step the fire giant moved back. The fire giant screamed, but the scream was not of pain, it was a shout of anger. Try the L World. COM platform _for the most advanced reading experience. Boom. All of a sudden, the fire giant punched the tornado. Rowena's body was thrown into the swirling force. Before she could steady herself, the fire giant embraced the tornado. The fire giant tightened the embrace as the tornado began to form cracks. Annoying bug, Rowena heard the fire giant speak to her in a demonic voice. Slowly the tornado turned darker and darker. The white frost took a turn to the opposite and transformed to pitch black. Rowena raised her hand, trying to move the tornado forward while dispelling the dark energy invading her spell. Her nose bled as her skin became pale as a paper. Holy Maiden, by Ning, who was witnessing the battle from a secluded room in Mazeroth, murmured under her breath. She could see the dark energy weakening Holy Maiden's energy. It felt as though the fire giant was drawing the blackness around it to get stronger. She could vaguely see unknown dark energy being absorbed by the fire giant from the sky itself. Rowena stopped powering the tornado. Within a few moments, the stormy clouds perished from the night sky. Yet again the full moon showered the ground with her light. Unexpectedly, when the light was shone on the fire giant, it grew weaker. Rowena noticed this by seeing the flicking eyes of the fire giant. When the tornado evaporated, the giant lost its balance. It stumbled forward only to receive a giant fist made of ice to its face. The icy mist enveloped the area, and when Rowena emerged from the icy mist, her eyes were glowing. The students were able to see Rowena now as she was floating, and her figure was growing in size rapidly. The armor covering her body enlarged. In a few minutes, she was in the center of a giant made of ice. Thus, the battle between a human and a fire giant turned into a battle between two giants. Only a few minutes passed when the ice giant grew to the size of the fire giant. Ice mirrors. Rowena noticed the fire giant's weakness to light. So she cast a spell that formed hundreds of mirrors made of ice around them. All the mirrors appeared in the angel to reflect and focus the moonlight onto the fire giant. Even in the face of hundreds of mirrors shedding light onto it, the fire giant stood still. The third piece of the soul was the soul piece of the Dark Lord after all. The fire giant began to smash the mirrors in the sky. The power of the moonlight was the reason Eladir chose this particular day. On any other day, defeating the fire giant would have been near impossible. The fire giant violently smashed the mirrors faster than Rowena created them. Looking at the fire giant getting close to her, she yet again raised her hands towards the sky. Then she called for the most powerful weapon in her arsenal. Updated _ at Lworld. I call forth thy coldest flames in the universe. A gush of frosty wind immediately surrounded Rowena's body. An invisible force pushed the fire giant and put out the flames around them. Then, a layer of frost layered everything within a mile radius. From the sky itself, a stream of blue flames flew to Rowena, taking the shape of a winged woman. Primordial flame, Victoria immediately recognized the phenomenon as the primordial flames while the other students were gawking at the sky startled. The cold flames, Edith mumbled. For the first time, the fire giant's pitch-black eyes flickered and Rowena sensed an aura of distress from whatever possessed the fire giant. Victoria never believed the primordial flames possessed a mind of their own, but when she saw the flames escaping from her and now it had chosen an extremely powerful cultivator as its master, she believed the tests were true. She thought having cosmic energy would let her absorb the primordial flames. Destroyer, directly above the fire giant, a giant sword that was triple the size of the fire giant materialized. The frost-covered sword hung above the fire giant as the primordial flames coiled around the sword like a dragon. The sword gradually grew in size to the point it made the fire giant look puny as an ant. "Shit," the fire giant mumbled as the sword descended on itself. Boom! When the sword landed on the ground, it created a mushroom cloud as though a nuke went off. The shock wave shook even the castle as many students were thrown off balance. Rowena lost all her strength. Hence, she fell from the sky. She slowly lost consciousness. The battle took everything in her, and before she closed her eyes, she saw a golden light flash across her eyes. Bai Ning teleported to where the battle was happening. She caught the holy maiden in the midair before she hit the ground. A deep dark line formed on Bai Ning's forehead as she saw no signs of the fire giant. She spread her senses to locate the giant but found no living beings in the near vicinity. The vital signs in Rowena's body started to diminish, so Bai Ning didn't dare to linger around or go search for the remains of the fire giant. Her first priority was to make sure Rowena was alive and well. After the battle between Rowena and the fire giant concluded, the desolate mountain where Eladir was imprisoned received guests again. Keep him still, updated _L world. See, Michael's body was violently trembling. Gaia's clothes were drenched in the blood gushing out of Michael's mouth, ears, nose, and eyes. The fire giant was lying beside him badly mutilated. Its hands and lower half were missing. They were evaporated by the cold flames. Eladir was quick enough to save the fire giant before the cold flames destroyed the soul piece. He never expected Rowena to possess a primordial flame. Each piece of the soul was connected. Because the cold flames damaged one piece of the soul, the others residing within Michael began to respond to it. One piece couldn't survive without the other. Therefore, the other soul pieces tried to leave his body. In simple words, he was dying and he would die unless Eladir put his soul back together again. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.